Can I just say a few words before you guys take over? So tonight is the big night for you. This is kind of the culmination of all the 4 months of work you've been doing. And I just have to say, it's been a joy to work with you. You guys are phenomenal and you're everything we hoped for. You guys ask really good questions. You have really great ideas. You know, you pushed us and challenged us, and it's just been an incredible journey. And I know this has been a sacrifice of your time, pretty big sacrifice, especially on a beautiful night like tonight. So we acknowledge that, right? We appreciate it. We appreciate you for giving your time, and your talent and your energy and your smarts and all that good stuff. So, what you do tonight, we'll take to the council. We'll give the city council a sneak preview of your recommendations at the city council retreat on April 26th and 27th. That's Friday, Saturday. And then the full report, and hope you can come, is at the May 6th city council meeting. It's a Monday night. So we'll have you guys come and meet in a round table or a square with the council. So be, on equal footing with them. And then you guys can more formally give your presentation at the May 6th council meeting. But main thing is, I just want to thank you. This has been really fun. And I'm also kind of bummed that this might be your last meeting. And I just want to figure out a way to capture you and maybe keep you as the city's think tank or something on an ongoing basis, because we need this. It's really important. So, but I'll try to be as quiet as I can tonight. This is you all coming up with your recommendations. I'm here to answer questions but this is really your night tonight. So thank you.
And to tack onto that, there are some gift bags. I handed out a couple earlier, but everybody gets a little gift bag from Carla, Rob, and I. Just a little thank you for your time here. And in addition to what he said, you guys worked outside of this meeting as well. So thank you for not just coming, but also putting in time outside of these meetings and doing some extra homework. So it's very, very, again, I've mentioned this before, I think highlighted my career to get to work with you guys. Like this has just been so fantastic for me. So, thank you. I second that.
Okay.
Well,
So there's the agenda, which is just, your deliberations. So I'm happy to give the floor to whoever wants to lead. And I think I'm guessing it's gonna be Jill.
yes, I have the document.
And the agenda.
I gotta type C it after.
That's why I thought about it. There's not, so.
That yours?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Okay, so I apologize, I didn't respond to the first couple of emails asking where this document was. I have been swamped with my day job. So I'm glad that Melinda shared it, and also thank you to Rob and Melinda for populating a lot of the missing pieces. We had a little bit of a working session last week on Thursday to look at some of these specific items, and there were a couple items that I wanted to kind of clarify, kind of how this is going to work. And then we can discuss and deliberate as needed. So let's see, can we make this full screen? There we go. Okay, so the first section here, I wanted to identify the big levy lid lift items, and kind of talk about those together. So a couple of things. Number one is you probably noticed if you open this up that I have 4 lines for a levy lid lift to fund public safety. And that's because basically each one of these is an additional tranche. So if you only want the first 2, if you want to vote 3 for the first 2, then that means that would raise a sum of $1.1 million. And I think some of you kind of got the message there that, and so if you want all 4, if you want to vote for all 4, then you can vote for all 4, but each one of these is incremental.
And it's per year, not biennial.
This is, the fiscal impact is an annual fiscal impact. And the goal, as you may recall, the goal is that there's a structural deficit of 2.6 million by 2030. And so although it's not as big now, but by the time we get to 2030, it's 2.6 million. So I think that we want to kind of set ourselves up, not just to not be in, or not just to not, or to fall short of our funding gap, but we also want to make sure that by the time we get to 2030, that we fill that gap so that we're not eating. If we hit that reserve amount in 2030, but we still have a gap of $1 million, then that means the next year will be under that. So
Plus the city needs to be able to grow rather than just eat by at flat
Right.
costs.
as we kind of talked about, there's that stair stepping. If we because we know that the slope of the line for the expenses is steeper than the slope of our property tax line, we want to try to give ourselves as much room so that we'll give ourselves more time before the lines cross again.
So a clarifier on the fiscal impact estimate column, is that biennial? You said annual.
This is annual. Everything, when I think of modeling, it's all annually.
Okay.
So what we want to do is we want to recommend enough items to, the rule of thumb, the shorthand is we want to get to 2.6 million. And we can talk about the phasing and what year they'll be effective, but we want to make sure that we have enough items that will be effective by 2030 that we fill that 2.6 million gap. So those are the 4 public safety ones. There's the NPD levy. And one of the things that we talked about, that Rob talked about, is that there's this opportunity that has been discussed, but I think it sounds like it's a real possibility that there's going to be a specific Lake Point levy to buy the land, to develop it, to do whatever with it. And so the idea is that the investment would be about $2 million, but there would be a levy for $2 million. So I put these in here. We can talk about like the phasing when this would actually happen. It would be a voter approved and all those things. But if we come in and we say we want to establish a metropolitan park district, and we want to get $2 million from that, and then we go again and say, actually, we want to add another 2 million then that puts a lot of emphasis on the MPD levy, that maybe we don't want to do that. So I did include this MPD levy for 350,000, this 5 cents per 1,000. And what that does is we could potentially say, okay, we want to establish the MPD and start funding it. At this 5 cent level, with sort of a communication and an expectation that this is the precursor to the fully funded Lake Point MPD funding mechanism. And so that is one thing that we could consider.
I just added that we're learning more and more about how Lake Point could unfold, and We're learning that to really do full due diligence on the property and testing and working with ecology is gonna take about 2 years. And so if the city council in the future wanted to purchase Lake Point, they would probably wanna do it once they have the property all figured out about 2 years from now. So just so you can have an idea on timing. One other point is, I think you all know this, but the Lake Point items are outside of the general fund and street fund. They'd be separately funded, so they don't actually touch the general fund and street fund.
Yeah, so this is more just like informational.
But it would be 2 million a year to buy Lake Point?
I don't know where you got that number, but you're pretty darn close.
You gave that number to me.
why you're so close. Okay, maybe, yeah, so, yeah, that's a rough number, but, to like issue bonds to buy the land and do the annual debt service on purchasing the land. And then all the development that is needed and, you know, all that stuff. That's about right.
2 million over about 20, you said like 20.
Yeah, it'd be about a $60 million project. That's land and development.
So we're talking more than just a shoreline, we're talking about the entire property.
No, we're talking, shoreline plus a few acres of what I'm calling Central Park on the west end of, so we would be purchasing a little more than a third of Lake Point. Yeah, but we would leave the rest of Lake Point for future private development, like a walkable urban village.
I'm glad it got put in here because, it helped me see sort of the environment in which we might be making choices.
Yep.
If Lake Point is super important to the city, it feels to me like it's quite important. For a variety of reasons, even if it doesn't touch on the numbers we're working with, it touches on the same content we're working with.
It's really important context for you guys to have, I think.
Yeah, when we're thinking about the property tax burden that we would be imposing,
That's right.
the DEI considerations, those kinds of things we need to put in context. And just one more piece of context for Lake Point, there is a lot of momentum behind Lake Point from a community perspective. I don't know how many of you were able to view the preliminary results from the EMC, but there was an 80% agree with that something should be done with Lake Point from the city. And then when they posed the question about property taxes, I think in the same ballpark that is being proposed, there was 56% that either strongly agreed or agreed with that we should impose a property tax in order to do this project. So there seems to be some pretty strong support for that.
So Jeff, my votes lean fairly heavily toward Lake Point economic development, not considering that this was outside of our work, financially speaking.
Mhm.
And so I think that things might rejigger as we talk tonight around that. Because I did not vote for other levies, feeling it was too much ask of the community.
So I think that's an important point, because we list here fiscal impact of being pretty much going back up to the levy, the fiscal impact is high. But one of the things all across the board, one of the things I think we have to keep in mind is there's going to be voter resistance out there.
Yeah.
And if we go from the lower levy amount up to a higher level, you're going to have an increasing amount of resistance. And if you want to layer in the Metropolitan Park District, which I very much in favor of, you're going to have competition start there.
That's right.
So I think in going through this, and thinking about our recommendations to the city council, we need to be sensitive to the fact that what are they going to be hearing and what's this going to look like to the voter? We could end up getting a no across the board if we.
That's too much.
Right,
Yeah.
and then we're spending money to put this election on, now we're even worse off than when we started.
One of my mentors used to always tell me, pigs get slaughtered.
Bulls and bears win,
Yeah.
pigs get slaughtered. We learned that in the financial industry.
Well, unfortunately,
I see it.
Bulls and bears win, yeah.
well, yeah, cause I was looking at EMC research and the MPD, only was like 50-50. And, it was slightly less than even half of the people that wanted it, they strongly wanted it. So I think we might be getting under 50 once people have to actually vote yes and no. to open their wallet.
So using this,
Unfortunately,
on like the pain then might
My
change
assumption
the
is
freezing
that
rules, so.
Oh,
there would be more
Yeah.
support for an MPD levy than there would be for a general levy, right?
I don't know that, I bet not.
Or do we not
Public
know?
safety. I know that most,
Oh, public safety, yeah.
public safety is
Yeah.
the,
And maybe
Yeah.
not, because we're still paying on the last parts levy too. So this is in addition to the levy, we're still paying
Right,
yeah, and
for parks. And
there's been a number of Parks and Rec initiatives that have gone down
but they could.
in our region lately.
Right. We pumped extra money into the bridge as well, didn't we?
So, yeah,
Didn't we pump extra money into the bridge? Get it done faster, what was that all about?
Not with, I mean, not with increased taxes or not with our spot or anything. We did it with, existing revenues.
I think the thing to keep in mind here too is that sensitivity is going to, of course, increase the more dollars we put out there.
Mhm.
But I think as we look at this, we may want to be thinking about how does the public look at this? And when you've got something like, public safety, you don't have to say much more. They know what that is. If you look at the other levies, increases, they get to be somewhat vague. Whereas you get down to the metropolitan district, we're talking about. You could make an argument to the public that's specifically saying these dollars can only be used and will be used specifically for these purposes. But I think we need to understand, and that's part of the idea that we need to be conscious of what's going to be acceptable to them, what's actually going to happen. We can justify every single one of these, a good idea, but only so much of it's going to be acceptable.
so that,
But you may understand this, can I just ask a clarifier? On the MPD levy, that would also be funds that would go into a different pot than the ones we're working with. But would it offset costs in the pots we're working with, and by what amount of the total gain?
I think it would be it is a different fund. But it would be a one-to-one offset
Oh.
to the extent that we're not, basically all of the public works maintenance, that maintains those parks, we could charge to that fund, is my understanding.
Yeah.
And certainly the amount that I have here would be a one-to-one offset. I'm not sure how much. We could go look at the public works engineering is.
A one-to-one offset, and I think the one thing to keep in mind is that you move things from one fund to the next, that does free up dollars in the other fund. So to the extent that we have revenue flowing in here right now, that's no longer needed to do these other things in the general fund, because we now have a levy over here that covers things that used to be covered by the general fund. We're reducing pressure.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean by
That's the
one-to-one
offset.
We get the full benefit
That's
of the 350. Yeah, so
And
for,
yet it's another levy on the community.
yes,
that's the
yeah,
things
a
we
tax is a tax is a
Yeah.
tax. Where,
Yeah, right, exactly.
there's a clarity to it. There's
Yeah.
a tighter connection between what are we asking
Yeah.
people to pay for and what are they getting?
That's right.
Then we
Exactly.
pour it all in the general fund
Then
and
the
start.
general fund levy,
That's right.
which would not be as.
And that was some of the commentary at the town hall was, I don't know where everything's going. It's not clear. And I think the clearer we can be, then the more trust we build.
one of the things regarding the public safety, I did want to point out that when we're looking at the historical expenses, so 2021, the public safety budget was 3.7 million, and in 2024, the budget forecast is 5.6 million. And so that is a compounding, it's called cumulative annual growth rate of 8.4%. It's grown on average 8.4% for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years straight. And so like this is one of those areas where we can go to the community, and we're talking basically $1.9 million that the police have said, okay, to maintain your 2 cops on staff at any given time, we need $2 million more per year. And so that is something that we can go to the voters and very clearly say, like, there's nothing, we have no control over this. There's no cutting costs here that we can do. There's no other option other than to fund it. And if you don't want to fund your police services with cuts from parks and other things, we need to fund it. So I feel like this is this is one of the reasons why I think that going a long way to fixing that gap with the public safety lift is a viable option.
I'm glad you just made the mention, over a 5-year period of those increases, because somehow it was in my mind from the presentation that there was an extra big singular leap from last year to this year. But you're saying there's been a big leap every year.
Yeah, it's been, so yeah,
There was a 14% increase last year, I believe.
So
so,
it was extra big, actually, but it's never small.
yeah, so like you can see it jumped 400,000, it jumped 800,000 in 20. Oh wait, hold on,
I feel like it's 5% by the time we get into 2028.
hold on a second, this is not.
Like not much 21 and 22.
Why do I have 2021 and 2020? Oh, because those are budget, but these need to be actual.
Budget, actual.
Yeah, hold on. That's 1, 2,
What I think
3.
to keep in mind about this one too is this maintains the current level of service.
Correct.
This isn't any improvement here, there isn't any increase here, and given the public sensitivity again, to what do they care about?
Right,
I mean, I think that's a good positive argument to spin and to make with the public on.
yeah, to some degree, it is a slight improvement, not in the number of officers, but they are more training, they're getting more training, and they are getting, like, they've got the body camera.
Yeah, but it's a legal obligation, so it's
Right.
not, it is, but at the same time, we could not remain with because they already have body cams, so let's say the January 2024 quality of service is no longer allowed. So it is a maintenance of capacity within what is defined as acceptable capacity.
Weren't we number 4? In that ranking? Yeah, I mean,
Oh, right.
of safety,
Number 5, yeah.
I mean, in order to maintain this great city, that's, I mean, that's the story. We're number 4. It takes resources.
You can also hear the argument, this is a small place and not much happens. So were that to be a recommendation and were the city council to pick it up, there's the story around why we actually need
Right.
robust law enforcement, isn't there? Because I think people, whether it's true or not, people have the mindset that, not that much happens.
I think that's a great point, that people are gonna be thinking about that, but I think that we have to, we may be reluctant to do this. But if our strategic plan for economic development is the increased density and population in the city, and that's an equity, is constant level of service, is that gonna work?
And inviting more people in to our community from outside.
Yeah, so
That's
lots
what
of
we want to
service
be, that
actually down,
destination.
but funding doesn't match.
Yeah.
While I
Really
agree,
catch up, want to get in front of it.
true, but I think if the message, so while I agree, I think if we want to be consistent on the messaging part, we either stick with, we're just addressing a constant level of service, which I think is the more easier, more straightforward message, is just the same quality of service goes up. We therefore have to just align to the cost, not much we can do, rather than say, hey, we're number 5 and we want to stay that way. Because we're not over investing in, compared to other cities, we're a small city, we don't have lots of, I mean, our public safety cost is through the roof, but not due to the amount we actually use compared to other cities, blah, blah, blah. So I think while I agree with, we don't want to downgrade to number 5, I wouldn't weave it into the messaging, just because it makes the message more complex of, wait, but nothing happens here. Why do we, it's not because we're investing a lot in police, we're investing too much in police. And so I think just sticking with the same quality of service, minimal quality that minimal, the constant quality that we're getting, which is neither too high or too low, just increased, we need to align to the cost, not much we can do. And leave it at that, even if we know that we have other arguments, but would make the message more complex.
I'm wondering which one of the levy levels keeps it at a constant.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we should have more than one. I mean, I agree going in with the fact that inflation, right, we have to keep up with that, but I think our message isn't just for this year, right? We're wanting to start planting that seed for what we see coming down the road. So we also want to start talking about where do we want to be as a city, kind of paint some of that big picture for them too. Because the
Yes.
more they see that vision, then the next time you ask them for something, they're like, oh, that's part of the vision. They're not switching and
Agreed.
it's not, oh, the council said this, or we voted this person and they want this pet project. They're seeing, no, this is city and they're on a mission, and that's all I'm saying. I know using the four, I feel like it was data to back up everything, but
Yeah,
I mean,
but
people are proud of that. I would hear it at coffee shops. Wow, we haven't had a murder. Wow, we have before. I mean, they were excited.
no, sure, but
For a
the
lot of
vision
people, it's a
statement.
big deal.
Yeah, but the vision statement, putting it in a vision statement of, by the way, we want to continue a high quality of
Yes,
service.
exactly.
That works. Saying this, we're number 4. We're number 4 because we don't do crime. So of course we're number 4.
Yeah.
So luckily, we don't actually have to determine the messaging for what goes to the voters. All we need to do is we need to make a recommendation based on what we think the potential of success is. So I have medium across all of these, but what we could do is we could say like, this is a medium high, for the first two, and then medium for the latter two. And then we can all go and vote
So
And-
I just got another question here about the numbers. The fiscal impact estimate is the same for the first handful.
Yeah, so they are all exactly the same because it's all incremental 8. So this one is the first 8 cents. And so if you do this one and this one, it is 16 cents total. It's an incremental 8. So if you only do 8 cents, you get 560,000. If you do 16 cents, it's 560,000 plus this 560,000 for 1.1 million.
I think you mentioned something earlier about that I didn't quite math out, but I was assuming that you would either ask for the 8 or the 16 all at once.
Yeah, so the reason that I did this is because if everybody agrees that we should do at least 8, then great, we're done. We can lock that in. If half of us agree or most of us agree that tranche 2, then we can say, okay, that one's good too. If we get to the third one and only a third of us are saying that we want to do that one, then we can stop there. If we say if I put them as separate line items, then it's harder to say like, oh, I'm voting yes for 16, but I'm not voting, or I'm voting yes for 32, but I'm not voting for 8. Like it makes it a little bit tougher and it also makes it harder to model like how much you're including in that fill the gap.
Right.
So.
So you had mentioned the messaging was up to the city, but is it correct? The city is not allowed to actually advocate and encourage people to vote yes for their own levies, right? Like, is that the way?
Before I answer that question, can I introduce you to somebody?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, hi.
Stephanie Lukacs, she's our deputy city manager, and the night she was supposed to present, she was out of town, so I did a terrible job that night. You did. Yeah, so she wanted us to meet you all because I've been bragging about you.
He's been bragging on you too.
Well, I can already see why this thing is.
Exactly.
I just want to thank you all for the work you're doing. So important. So appreciate the time you spent, the thoughtfulness with which you approach this work and the spreadsheet. I just wanted to sit in for a little bit and don't mind me, but I'm just really just supportive and care very much about the recommendations you make to us. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so we can develop messaging as long as it's factual.
Right, okay.
So it can't be in like an advocacy advertisement, but as long as we have facts and the facts can support, the cause, but it has to be neutral and factual.
Right, so I thought, yeah. So you're relying on a group of probably citizens to do the advocating and encouragement and then I guess it's the same way the school works, where like basically city employees can only help with that in their off time.
That's right. Like with walkways and waterways, from the time the council put it on the ballot to when the vote happened, we went on the road, so to speak, and we went to different community groups and locations presenting about the ballot measure, but we were just saying, here's what it is.
I went to some of them as a member of the citizen committee and advocated for it both. And I know other people who work for the city who worked on it in their off time.
Okay. So the DEI considerations that we have here is that it is less regressive than a utility tax, but we may we may want to expand the public assistance and outreach. And that'll be true, I think, for all of the levy lifts. There, we did have, let's see, so yeah, so any other comments about potential of success on how we want to represent this to, again, this is, we're just giving our recommendations to the council. And so when and if we agree to approve these different tranches, so I have, this requires a voter approval, so, but it does have a higher likelihood of success than maybe other voter approval items because it is justified based on the increases in public safety contract costs. Though additional taxes, higher taxes may mean a lower likelihood of success. Any other considerations or any other thoughts about what we should set for the potential of success or how we should frame it in our recommendation?
I'll throw a monkey wrench in. Lower in the spreadsheet, we talk about this retail sales tax for public safety.
Mhm.
With the 3% max, we could have 1.3% max, we could have 0.1%. My cynical side says, no matter what we do, King County's gonna go for that full 0.3% at some point.
Yeah.
So if we don't try and get the 0.1% now, it may leave us. So now we have potentially saying, how do we do that then and have two different public safety? I grouped them together because both of them being public safety. This one's different, obviously, but my cynical side, if we don't go get that 0.1%, it's going away.
Yeah, so yeah, so I agree. Like I think that pairing them together is a great idea. And I think that this one gets a little bit higher likelihood of success because you can frame it that way. You can say this is a use it or lose it. You're probably going to pay it regardless, but it can go to us or it can go to Burien. You know, so
Then another way to think about this too, is presentation, you've got two different revenue sources here coming from two different places. So I think you could be talking to the public about this. Yes, the public is going to contribute X part of this through the levy, but you're also having a tax on retail businesses as well. They're going, so you have both the public and business contributing to this public safety. I think that's actually a bit more balanced.
Public safety is a key tenet of our fiscal sustainability.
Right.
I think with the BI ones too, it's not redundant having two sources, is sales tax typically impacting lower income population a lot more heavily. So if we're looking at both property tax ones and the sales tax, it's gonna be a little more equitable as well.
yeah, the nice thing about sales tax is we don't charge sales tax on food items. And so there's a component of.
And from an equity, and going back to the equity statement of use it or lose it, while if sales tax is not the most progressive tax, if it is going to be used anyway, do we want to be using it for Burien police force through King County, or do we want that to go back into Kenmore? It doesn't have, it kind of, I feel is the operative term, I feel it kind of loses the DIA, issue, because it's not like we either apply it or it doesn't get applied. It's gonna get applied. Do we apply it and we invest it here, or do we apply, or do we have it applied and invest it elsewhere?
Yeah, I was looking at it, as far as use of police services through our kind of downtown retail core, if you look at the maps of where crimes are happening, that's where they're actually concentrated more rather than in the residential. So having it affiliated with sales tax would actually mean that people using those services are the ones actually paying the things.
So quick political question, which may be unimportant to us entirely and a complete rabbit hole. But I'm gonna ask it anyway, is there a concern from city to city that one city that needs the resources less might be claiming them when they would be better used in another community with greater issues? If the amount that we could claim is gonna be applied to a place that has no need, how does that, or do we care? I'm just asking it. It may be a dumb question. You're like, that question doesn't even make sense, Ollie, but I'm asking.
Well, did their need happen though, because their citizens refused to support things? So since we step up and support, now we don't get the other one.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
My instinctual response would be, while I, Edward, as a citizen care, I, Edward, part of the Kenmore FSP task force cares less. Because
Well,
my,
I'm more interested, sorry, I didn't be hurtful, I'm more interested in the city's
oh,
perspective on this. Sorry, I didn't focus my question,
No.
I apologize. I wasn't thinking of the taxpayers or the residents as much as from city to city, is it a thing? Because the library system tried to claim some resources it rightfully could at one point for a community, and it did not go well. And it affected relationships that were important, so I'm just throwing that out, it may not be the same city to city.
I haven't run into that.
Oh.
Stephanie?
Are we seeing other cities take advantage of this already?
That's a good question.
It's gonna be on the ballot in Gig Harbor in August.
Yep.
That's all I know.
That's a good question. Yeah.
This may be money grubbing finance guy talking, but you know, we're dealt a bad hand in finger. We have a structural deficit because of legislation that we have no control over, and we're here today because of that.
Yeah.
And here we've got an opportunity to get a little bit of that back. I think we've got to take those opportunities.
Yes.
If you're too few, we could far between.
The county has a lot more political power to fix their structural deficits by leaning on the legislature to help them, whereas we have less.
Definitely.
Okay, so I think we're feeling relatively good about how we're thinking about this. We can vote and then sort of frame it in that way. I guess on the MPD levy, I kind of described that phasing of kind of setting up the MPD first, and then in 2 years when they do Lake Point. Are there any thoughts that we want to portray separate from the other levies about the potential success and the DEI considerations?
I intentionally made some pretty provocative rankings down in the special events section. Thinking that if we're going to have a municipal parks district and we're interested in people understanding what they're paying for, maybe it's a parks and community events district and we lump all that together.
Is that possible?
Sorry, I was reading something about sales tax and I missed it. Can I give you clarification on the sales tax, the public safety sales tax? If the county imposes it, they can retain 60%, but then they have to share the remaining 40% with cities distributed on a per capita population basis. So we would get some.
And more than 0.1.
No, that would be 40% of the 0.1.
0.3.
40% of 0.3,
Right.
but against population, it would be hard to know if we would get, how much we would get.
Okay, but it sounds like it based on our population, it could likely be less than what we are including here.
Yeah, it might be. Can you repeat the question?
Can the MPD pay for the fireworks?
Yes, I would say that's recreation. It's parks and recreation.
Trying to make the MPD look really attractive.
Yeah.
By putting all the community events in.
Yeah, they're gonna love that. Can I give you guys a little more context on MPD? And this is, like I said, this is all stuff we're learning. So like, if it was like a, hey, let's go for the 350 and then later it would be for Lake Point. That could be confusing to voters, because Lake Point is kind of the big thing that gets the attention. But there's so much work that has yet to be done on Lake Point. I think, for example, like I mentioned, the due diligence and the testing and working with ecology. And we don't even have a real parks plan for Lake Point that the public has agreed to. And some other things that really kind of make Lake Point a big question mark right now. In 2 years from now, it won't be a question mark. We'll have the due diligence done, ecology approval, a parks plan that the public likes, figured out. But if you put something on the ballot that says offset general fund and future Lake Point at some date, trust us, that the public might get confused. I'm not telling you what to do or anything, but I'm just giving you some additional thoughts, and I'm gonna try to be as quiet as I can now.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise perspective here. Once we have Metropolitan Park District established, then we can go in future years for a higher levy, or we can issue bond. All of that is possible. So I think to the extent that we can maximize our probability of getting that passed in the first year, so that we have it for the future, I think that's where our emphasis ought to be. I would look to take less risk by expanding this, particularly the things that we can't really say with confidence that are going to happen. Yeah, but we know this, these are the things that could happen. I think our community supports parks. I think if we keep them out reasonable, they understand that this is going to help support them, particularly as our density increases. There's going to be additional costs associated with that. I think people would understand that. And I think they would support it.
My assumption between rows 9 and 10 is that a Lake Point specific levy would be at another time by a different means than our recommendations, or were we, it appeared to be outside of our purview, right?
Right, so I mean, everything's on the table, right? Like we could say, we want to propose a $2.5 million per year levy also park district and build up the war chest for Lake Point and also take a big burden off of the general fund, move the recreation over there, move as much of the $800,000 or $900,000 of public works into that MPD. Like we could propose that. That seems like maybe not the most effective way to kind of allocate the money, but we could propose that. So I put it on here as sort of a starter fund that would get expanded when Lake Point gets solidified. But my personal inclination is that I would rather establish the MPD when Lake Point is more solidified and kind of like use Lake Point as the justification to establish it. And then you can like kind of package it as we're doing this for Lake Point, the rest of our parks and the recreation, and sort of package it into one big deal and try to get as much at one go as possible. But I don't know, that might not be the most strategic.
Rob's concern, the alternative is that might be the most effective for someone to want it would be asking for a lidlet for the MPD without attaching it.
Right, yeah, so it's hard to say what's the most successful. We're not political strategists here, but.
You know, again, it's not a lot about Kirkland's Park levy vote last November, because my wife works there. And and they did a big study, you can look on their site now, they did a whole research project as to why it failed.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason it failed, don't quote me, part of the reason it failed is because people were confused about all the different components. So I think the point is, I think both these things are awesome, but I really, really want them all. If we don't necessarily, this group doesn't necessarily have to tie them all into a big bow. And we might have a better chance at getting the MPD now at a lower dollar value.
Right.
Knowing that someday it could facilitate Lake Point, but not tying it to the fate of the Lake Point soil testing.
Okay, so for purposes of facilitating sort of like our voting and coalescing around a recommendation, how does this structure make sense? And is this something that should we adjust this in any way so that we can vote on it in a different way, or how should we think about it as for those purposes?
I'd like to keep them separate as they are, but note that if we're voting for row 9, it does not include Lake Point rationales.
Yeah, we're
simply for
okay.
a metropolitan part of the district.
Because we say maybe 10 and 11, since they aren't part of this, are just down as a footnote.
Right,
I mean, we've discussed them, but we could take them out of the vote.
yeah,
So it doesn't get in the way.
Yeah, I would agree to keep them separate also because I know that while I think the feedback we've received both during the town hall but elsewhere is that the support for our parks is unanimous. I know that there is more, maybe separate opinions on light cones. And so we probably want to break both of those into.
okay. So I've removed it from above, so we just have the MPD, and then we'll just say that, we'll add notes over here that, be established now and,
But just about the process. So the first voting we did is initial, and then now we're doing the discussion, and then we'll vote again.
you can adjust your votes based on our discussion is the idea. My plan was I was going to build out the mechanics to convert the votes into how that
Right.
impacts the model. I didn't get a chance to do that.
No.
But yeah.
Now, a follow-up question though is, given what Vince said, do we assume that if we voted yes on the MPD levy, that it does or does not include all the recreation items below?
I mean, it's, I think the assumption that whatever amount that we put here, 350,000 is a direct offset to the general fund. So whether we shift all public, $350,000 worth of public works and maintenance to the Metropolitan Park District, and so it's a net zero, then that's great. If we decide to shift $300,000 worth of public works and $50,000 worth of events, like however you want to slice and dice and move dollars around, the end result is that we get 350,000 of benefit to the general fund.
I wonder if that isn't really more of an operational or city council level decision.
Yeah.
I think the way you characterize it is correct.
Yeah.
We get $350,000 worth of benefit out of this. Wise head will sit down and decide how to cover that.
Well, yeah, I hear you, and I don't disagree with that. I think though that somewhere in here, we have to find something to. I don't think the appetite in the community, I don't think what I heard at town hall said, we have to do all this with added revenue. I think if we go forward and we don't have anything cut, I think we haven't quite done our duty,
Concur.
whether we like it or not.
Yes.
Reality.
And sometimes you can cut and give back in another way, but it is about, I mean, we're saying that it's wrong, I'm just saying, it is about perception. And you're right, if we don't give something up, then they're gonna say, well, you didn't really listen to us, because we told you we wanted a balance. Doesn't have to be 50-50. It can be 80-20, but you're right, it has to be something, even if we get it back another way.
So I'm trying to play PR and say, you want your fireworks, vote for the MPD.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah, we can.
I told you, I took very
Pit people against each other.
That is my annual party of the year.
Yeah, but I think Jeff is suggesting leaving them separate right now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Right.
So North, can you hear us? North's online.
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't make it. Yeah, I had a question about the MPD level. Is there a duration as far as once it's implemented to the levies that are imposed?
Goes on forever.
Yeah, it's indefinite. So, one, I guess maybe a question is it fixed, or does it have opportunities to raise like other property taxes, like a 1%?
Well,
Yeah.
that'll be voter approved, right? The raises and so forth, but it's like you're saying, it's just fixed forever once the voters kind of approve the different, I guess, increments.
Rob's gonna give us
So,
some context.
Yeah, it gets a little bit nerdy, but let's say it went on the ballot, and on the ballot, you do need to say how many cents. You can do up to 75 cents. Let's just say, for example, the ballot measure said 75 cents. Okay. But let's say the initial year, let's say the metropolitan district, the district forms, the board forms, which is the city council. And then they impose a 5 cent out of 75 cents. Because the ballot said 75 cents, the council can do 5 cents, bank the difference. And then, a couple of years later, a few years later, increase it to whatever amount within the 75 cents without going to the voters. So one thing I'm a little bit nervous about is saying it's 50 cents or 75 cents, but then saying to the voters, we're only gonna do 5 cents, trust us not to, go higher. And so one way to address that is you could say on the ballot, it's gonna be 5 cents. And then to raise it any further, like for a future lake point, you'd have to go to voters.
Okay, so but there is no other mechanic for raising that rate.
Otherwise, it's just subject to the 1% growth limit, like regular property taxes.
Okay,
Remember, you can also use bonding financing to leverage at 5 or 75 cents. You could involve yourself in a much larger project than what would just be your annual amount year through the levy.
yeah.
I
Okay.
kind of like, I keep coming back in my own mind to, again, let's not be things get slaughtered here. If we get something, in my mind at least, see what Bob and others think, I would think when you get to something as large and as important in people's mind as Lake Point, the voter's gonna have to weigh in on that. Yeah. And so I think it might be better to get this in place, get the park district in place, get the structure in place, get people understanding what this is, and be enough for the first year. I think timing is going to be important here, because my reading of the Metropolitan Park District rules is that it could take more than 1 year to get this going, because if you don't go to a levy this year, that means you have to go to a levy next year, you have to get that passed. You got all the planning to do, and if we want to move on Lake Point within the next 2 years, we may not be there yet. Whereas if we got it passed this time through, we would have the groundwork in place to be able to manage that sort of transaction in the near future.
Front load some of the administrative setting it up, and then the Lake Point can just be funding as opposed to.
Let's say Lake Point fails, right? The voters don't want Lake Point, they don't want to support Lake Point. You've already got 350,000 per year offset with the Metropolitan Park District, so for ongoing park services.
That's a good point. Maybe we should, I don't recall, but that 350,000, we offset that in any place against our expenses elsewhere.
Like public works park maintenance.
We don't necessarily have to be very specific about what we're gonna do there, but there is an option.
Can I say one more thing about timing really quick?
Yeah.
And that is, if a metropolitan park district forms, the tax doesn't go into effect the very next year. Because what you're doing is you're actually forming a municipality for Parks and Rec. And so what happened is the voters would approve it, then the board would form, i.e. the city council, they'd put their policies and rules and set up insurance and take the whole next year to do that, impose a new tax for the following year. So let's say voters approved it in 2024, you wouldn't see the revenue until 2026. And who did I interrupt?
I was kind of, I guess, on the opposite point, and also to your point. We heard, I heard a lot about tax fatigue, and I know I'm engaged in local politics here as well, and it's definitely showing in pollings, and there are 3 initiatives that's gonna be on the ballot for this year, so just kind of thinking through the different lenses that by doing a metropolitan park district, I understand setting that groundwork, but if we know that Lake Point is a possibility, kind of layering on that the revenue doesn't kick in, so that means the taxes don't get full until potentially around the same time Lake Point might be a reality that people might have to. So would it be better to try to get a little bit at a time? Or should we look at like setting a bigger foundation, just go at it once, I mean, and this is kind of, this, I don't do this for a living, I volunteer for it, but I do sense that there's gonna be a lot of past conversation on this election, on both, you know, state level, county level, school level, like, it's all over, budget shortfall is so it's just gonna be top of mind here. So if we're going in for a little bit of that still might be a difficult pill to swallow.
So, back in 2016, when we were starting to invest in the parks and we did the walkways and waterways, was there a reason why we didn't do the MPD back then?
I don't know. I can't remember why. I just. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, just curious.
I mean, it does add administrative burden, right?
Mhm.
Like if we were to just say, hey, taxpayers, we want to do a levy lid lift for the general fund. And by the way, we promise that we're going to use that for parks. Like that would be less work and less cost, administrative cost than it does to set up a municipality and get insurance and all those kinds of things. So it is more efficient. It is more like fiscally efficient to just put it into the general fund. The reason why you set it up as a metropolitan park district is to have that accountability and promise to the citizens that it has to be used for that. It cannot be used for anything else. And so theoretically, that makes it a higher likelihood to approve than just a generic levy lid lift.
Well, I would suggest that most of the people, at least that I know or that I've worked with on getting the vote out types of projects, they're really savvy to the fact that when you vote for something specific and the funds go to the general, your vote didn't matter that much. So a lot of people don't vote for things that are earmarked for something that go into a general fund.
Yeah.
They know better. They've seen it have to be repurposed too many times.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're feeling pretty settled on this. Is the 5 cents the right amount? Do you think? I was just looking at the public works maintenance cost per year is about 1.9 million. It looks like 2 million for 2024 budget. And so we could set this up. We could do something similar where we have tranches and say the first 5 cents is 350, the next 5 cents is another 350. And so that would get to your point, where, if we're going to take a bite of the apple, let's take a bigger bite. Do we want to do that?
Now that public works maintenance, how much of that is actually Parksville?
I don't know. Good question.
I don't know.
How much, if we set up a metropolitan park district, how much without Lake Point how much of our expenditures could we move into that? Like how much could we benefit?
The Parks and Recreation and Facilities budget, which includes like City Hall, is close to it's like 1.8 million a year. So if you took out facilities, which is a small part, you're easily 1.5 million a year that you could offset Parks and Rec for.
So there's your answer. So we could probably,
That's a low figure.
yeah, we could probably do 20 cents, 1.4 million.
This is the hard part, because then it comes into voter appetite, and there's pollsters and people who know where to set those figures. And
Yeah.
we aren't those people.
Well, so we can make our recommendation, right? We can say like, okay, we've got a $2.6 million gap to fill, and we think that you should fill $1 million of it with public safety and $1 million of it with a park, and then the 600,000 with a couple of traffic cameras. And if they get into, they talk to the ballot people, like the council has these resources, and they say, it's more likely you're going to get 1.5 from public safety and 500K from, that's a higher likelihood of success. Then the council obviously has their prerogative to kind of adjust things as necessary. we're just making our recommendations based on what we heard, based on our personal convictions and those kinds of things, but we don't need to be everything, right?
To be clear, we're looking for $2.6 million over 6 years.
No. Annual run rate cost. We need 2.6.
No, we don't. In 2030, we're below our reserve by 2.6. So we're above our reserve until 2028.
But the structural deficit, the gap between expenses and revenue.
Right, but we don't actually go below our reserve for the next 4 years.
Go check this.
You mean go into our reserve or go below?
We don't go below the 20% threshold
Right.
till 2029.
You're right, but if,
Yes, on the.
but my
next slide
understanding,
of
Matt,
that,
probably
yeah.
wrong, is if we don't
I
address
think
this
it's on the
by
next
2.6, then
Street.
we are
Yeah, there's.
spreading the lines, but ultimately they
right,
still
yeah.
cross.
Yeah, they're always gonna cross. That's not.
This
that's
is the
unavoidable.
reserve goal and this is the
1%.
fund balance. So that,
Sure.
so it's 4.6 down to 3.3. That's 1.3 million. Maybe it was 2.6 for the biennium.
Cause
That's
this
the
is
most current one.
What's the most?
No, that's.
Yeah. I think we all wrote that 2.6 figure down a week or two ago,
Yeah.
right? I'm remembering the same figure.
We're trying to keep the lines from crossing until 2030,
Right.
I believe is our mandate.
That's right.
After that, yes, we're gonna have to meet again, but
Well, I mean, there's the, the name of the task force is sustainability. We want to set ourselves up so that we are in a financially sustainable position.
but why would we wanna reap more revenue today than the city needs to operate?
To give, because if we are at, say we are at the reserve goal
Yeah.
in 2030.
Yeah.
Well, like then we have to come back here, not in 2030, but we have to come back in 2026 or 2027 because.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
need
I
to
mean,
get
the
ready
problem
for
doesn't
it.
go away.
Yeah,
But as I understand it, when we formed, our purpose was to look at the next 3 bienniums. And at the end of those 3 bienniums, have the 20% threshold met. That's my understanding of what we were doing. I could be wrong,
Cause,
that's,
I mean, we wanna be sustainable, but we're also in an unsustainable environment.
yeah.
Right, yeah.
As sustainable as we can be.
My hope was that, in addition to saying about the 20, that the lines wouldn't be crossing.
right, till 2030.
But, you can stay above the line, the 20% and still have your lines crossing.
So that at 2030, we are still expecting to have more revenue than expenses. Or at least equal revenue and expenses by 2030.
Right. I mean, there's no municipality in the Puget Sound area that doesn't have this problem, except Woodinville. Everybody's lines are crossing. Except Woodinville. Right, so I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just saying like, it's not, is it realistic that we're gonna solve the 1% problem for the next 8 bienniums? I think the answer is probably no.
Right, yeah.
And B, I'm all about not waiting till the problem becomes acute. But I'm also sensitive to the fact that there's no reason for us to bring in revenue today that isn't anticipated to be used until 2030.
Yeah, that's my expectation too. I'm not expecting you to bring in 2.6 million next year.
Okay.
It's a $2.6 million problem in 2030. And like the last task force did, they stepped it and phased it in.
Right. Mhm.
Which is necessary because like with the Metropolitan Tax or Park District, that even if we said, yes, go hit the gas as fast as possible, you're not gonna see a dime until 2026.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how much we're trying to raise, cause.
Yeah, that's, it's like, could you pick the levy, like, are we gonna end up with picking one levy for public safety? And then the MPD, and then if you do the math, that's 800,000, 900 in the first year.
yeah, so hypothetically, say you said, we're gonna go to the voters as soon as possible for public safety. That is something that went up 14%. Very recently, And so we want to do that. So we're gonna go to the voters for the levy lid lift, and we'll say, we'll do 3 tranches. So that's 1.6 million. Or let's do 2 tranches, 2 tranches for 1.1 million and the public safety sales tax. So that's $1.6 million that we would go to the voters this year in November. And so therefore we would get the benefit of that would we get that in 2025 or would that come in 26?
If it was just a regular levy lid lift
Yeah,
this year?
Yep.
2025.
2025. Okay. So if we don't want to be so aggressive, we could say 2026. And then we could say, we'll do the metropolitan tax district and we'll aim that to be 2028. So that'll add $500,000 in 2028. And then we can add the traffic cams, and the traffic cams take 2 years, so we can choose when to phase those in and out.
Can I just give you some information about voter fatigue or context for it? 5 cents. So the median home price for the assessor, which is not the market, median assessed value in Kenmore is $821,000. And so 5 cents applied to 821,000 is $41 per year divided by 12, $3.40 a month is 5 cents. 5 cent tax is $3.42 per month on a median price home in Kenmore.
So times 12 is 30, $36, $40 a year.
Yeah.
But are we thinking that we may need more than 1 5 cent, like a 5 cent here and then a 5 cent down, or am I just doing that right?
My concern with that is, I don't know. I am by no means expert in voter tolerances, but I think the more often you go out asking, the harder and harder it is to get approval. But then you have the opposite problem, which is if you ask too much one time, you don't get approval. So there's got to be some sweet spot in there that allows you not to continue going back to the voter frequently. And also it can read as incompetence if you have to keep going back. So I would be more into raising that a little bit, but not to the point where the voters are like, that's a hellacious sum. For me, $41 a year is ace. I'd pay triple that for the benefit that it brings in, but I'm a privileged person.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
On the ballot, like that 350 is turning everything.
If you put on the general election ballot, next to nothing, because you're piggybacking on the county's costs that they already have.
Okay.
You'd have to do a special election where we're the only thing on the ballot, and special elections are in February, April, and August. If you do a special election where we're the only thing on the ballot, it's in the neighborhood of like $60,000 to $80,000. I'd have to go back to an old memo that Garrett wrote a couple of years ago, but that's what my memory tells me.
Do we know which type of election is more likely, or is that variable by the year in the politics?
Presidential elections have stronger passage rates, and it's because of voter demographics. You have younger renters and say yes to things more.
Now, is this, something where like, would the city probably hire the political consultant to assist them with this, so then we really wouldn't get as much? That would also cut into the piece of the money we're collecting.
We wouldn't be able to hire a political consultant for a ballot measure.
Oh, no, like sometimes I hire this strategist to decide like which election and what,
No, we wouldn't. I wouldn't see us doing that.
Okay.
Part of what keeps coming back to my mind is we're going to present the city council with some recommendation. We're not making decisions about
Right.
when something's gonna go on the ballot.
Yeah.
Or if something's gonna go on the ballot. So I think reframing maybe some of our responses in terms of recommendation and thinking about, if, for example, Metropolitan Park District, what's our principle here is we want to have an absolute highest probability of that this is going to pass. And so we would recommend a number, 5 cents. If the city council in its wisdom and deeper consideration thinks it'd be more acceptable to go a higher number, fine. You put that out there, we recommend you go to 25 cents. But I think we have to leave that decision in the hands of the city council.
Yep. And what we can do as far as our recommendations are concerned is we can sort of, again, when we go through our next round of voting, we can assess the appetite for each one of these things, and then we can have a more concrete discussion about what we recommend the phasing to be. It's hard to say, well, you know, is this going to be this or that or the other thing, when we don't quite know what items are on the table. Once we know which items are likely going to be on the table as far as what we're going to recommend, then we can arrange them a little bit easier than in this ambiguous state.
Would it be useful to consider giving, since we don't know a number and we'd be shooting in the dark, to give a range or to give packages or something where, you said we recommend this. We think you've got to have at minimum this amount, but voter tolerance may allow for this amount, and here's the difference in the financial impact? Or is that a little more complicated than we might want to give?
We could probably give like our tier 1 recommendation. These are the things we think are what we really want. And then if those weren't working for you, then like will be our second choice.
Well, that's cool, but that's a little different than what I was suggesting. I was saying if we all said we want to put an MPD levy in our recommendations, can we say at this amount, this is what it would get you each year, and this is how it reaches our 2.6 goal. At this amount, this is what it gets you this year, and this is how it reaches it. You may not have to do one of the others.
Right, yeah, so our first choice is
That's what I wondered, is if that would be a meaningful way to give the city just a little extra data and not have us have to try and land on a specific,
right.
levy rate.
Also, did she mean part of that too, saying we are recommending this particular levy, but not this one with that? Like if you're doing this one, we're not recommending this one. That's what I thought when you were saying package, like, right, the NPD, then that one with the increase in utility tax, but not NPD and the levy left to general fund, or public fund and NPD, but not this one, you know.
I was assuming our vote would help us understand whether, like, let's say all of us put 3s on all the levies. We have to have another conversation, right? Because there's not going to be a voter tolerance most likely for that. So I would think that conversation would come after a round of voting, but I don't know.
Okay.
There's a couple of you who've done this before.
So hypothetically, let's see here. Sorry, this is.
Well, like what he was saying is like, so we may not want to come up with exactly 2.6 million, because that if our recommendation included more than that, then the council would be able to say, okay, well, we didn't took that one out and we'll still get to our 2.6.
Okay, so I just took the average of the voting and rounded it. So if it's 2.5 or above, then it hits the 3. If it's 2.49, then it goes to a 2. So if we add up the ones that round up to a 3 currently, then that gets us $2 million. So that includes.
A lot of money, it looks like.
So we have 500. We have levies of 900,000, and then the public safety sales tax of 460,000. And then the 3 cameras for 675, and then a couple of expense items to add on top of that for 200K. So levy adds up to 900, sales tax 500, and then
we got the discount in there for
the utility
rebate
tax
program.
rebate program. Yeah, so that is offsetting the revenue raises.
Scroll down to the LED camera. Is that not an initial cost?
No, this is the two, it's 200K. or sorry, 200K incentive. So there's a grant there, or there's an incentive to pay for the initial cost. There's $200,000 total initial cost, and we'll get 200K offset. And so the net savings after that is the 67 or 69. So then if we look at the twos,
That does not yet calculate in Melinda's recommendation that we might raise the cost of the first ticket, isn't it? The first ticket or some ticket for the K program. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
So that doesn't include that dollar figure yet.
right, and it doesn't include, oh, I guess that was already on there, the possibility of lowering the limit.
And is that 2 million each year or 2 million?
that's 2 million per year.
Yeah, that's ongoing.
That's the run rate.
We had some conversations where we were steering away from the one-time drops.
Melinda, can you send me the latest model, the one that has the 2.6?
It's
Yeah.
in the shared
Oh, is it?
folder. Yeah,
Is it the one that I keep?
it's RK.
I keep losing my access.
Oh. Yeah, let me get that for you.
And if we just do the low levy limit, we raise $3 million over 6 years.
Yeah. So yeah, like we can, if we want to, if we want to just kind of like start there and say like, let's focus on the items that seem to be popular and have a more detailed discussion about timing and phasing and that kind of thing. Is that where we want to go, or do we want to talk through these other items a little bit more that may not be as high on the list?
I would make a motion that anything that doesn't have a number in the fiscal impact column comes out at this point, because we're out of time.
Right.
I support that.
Oh,
That's a bad idea if we just can't wait for the number.
except the admissions tax, we do have a number for that. We have, it's 200 a year, 100,
Yeah, we don't know exactly, but conservatively, we think it's 100.
but what's it, we have a specific number in the model though. There's an assumption in the model that we would have to take out if we are recommending against the admission.
Yeah,
tax.
thank you. It's, yeah, it's 130,000. So,
Admissions tax, is that what we're talking
yeah,
about?
130,000 starting in 2025.
That's biennium. Looks like it's 65 starting in 2024.
That's because it's a partial year.
Yeah.
It's 130,000 in 2025.
Okay. So the and the context is that was in the previous FSP, but it sounds like there might be less appetite for it now.
Yeah, for the reasons I described a few meetings ago.
Yep. So this is so what this is this is already in. So eliminate admissions tax would be the option. So you might want to, if I don't know if you were voting for an admissions tax, but what we actually need is a decision on whether we should eliminate the admissions
Can
tax.
we quickly eyeball the most current graph where revenues and expenses?
And that's
Updated.
that is what
So it's
So that's gonna
not-
throw off, when you're looking at the low numbers versus high numbers also, if that was backwards.
Sent it to your Gmail account.
oh, you sent in my Gmail. Oh boy.
Just to confuse it.
Want me to send it to you?
Yeah, send it to the Kenmore so I don't have to pull up my personal email in front of everybody. Who knows what's on there?
I'm impressed you thought of
I just hit send.
And there it is. Let's back up.
As I said, I just got certified as an instructor, so,
No way.
but I'll talk to Melinda about that. How we can use redundant parts to generate some revenue. Yeah.
Also, yes.
Okay. So general and street fund, okay. So. That's nice. Okay. Okay, so what this suggests is that between 2029, the fund balance is 3.9 million. And then it drops to 1.3, which suggests that that is a $2.6 million deficit. So that means that if we do funding, so even if we do, if say we just did one-time cash infusions, we sold property of 2.6 million, or of the difference between 1.3 and 4.8, which would be 3.5. So if we sold property, one-time cash infusion, we put that in, then that means that the next year we would be down 2.6 million.
Right,
Even more.
understood, but yeah.
That's
right.
But our goal is 2030.
Our goal is a one-time amount of 2.6 million is how thin is.
3.5.
3.5.
We need to make up both of those gaps. We need to make up the
Right.
2029 gap and the
Right.
2030 gap.
And yet, we will increase ongoing revenues, but the expenses are gonna be climbing as well along the way. It's just outside of our timeframes chart.
My interpretation of our mandate is to get to a place where the lines don't cross within this scope. That's what we did last time, and that's how I interpret our mandate this time.
Within what?
But within the time scope. So basically, yeah, I want there to be more revenue than expenses in 2030.
In fact, the 2020 plan showed a little bit of a deficit in the first couple years, but then climbing out of it, by 2028.
That was my understanding too, hence the sustainability part of
Yeah.
it.
I mean, if you want, like, you're welcome, we're all welcome to have our kind of like, have our interpretation of what we think it should be, like, represented in how we vote and the comments that we leave. Like I said, the council's gonna get all of these materials. But yeah.
So we've been thinking about a gap for a long time. And what I think you're suggesting is that we might want to think about enough of a surplus out of what we're recommending that it would carry us further than the 2030 goal.
When I think of the gap, I think of the structural deficit gap. That's the gap that's in my head.
Yeah, it's not just a one-time dollar value.
Yeah, because we want, again, sustainability. We want the city to be in a place where it is sustainable for more than just to 2020 to 2030. And that all, the other thing that does is that builds in a little bit of cushion if we're wrong about something, or a voter thing doesn't get approved and we only get 75%, then that means that we may not have solved the structural deficit, but we won't necessarily be in the red in debt by the time that comes.
So I want to add in a new number.
Yes, please.
So I think, Paul, you'd mentioned the Kate, because I mentioned that we were like we're at $100 for the first level of fines. And so doing quick down and dirty math, I think the next lowest was 124.
It was 124.
Okay. So I did that calculation. So annually that would get somewhere between 100 to 120. 100 is a low estimate. So I would say, just to get that easy low number, 120. I mean, 100 or 120, but, if we raise it to 150 for the lowest, that would give us 270.
Where would that rank us with other communities or places?
That would be.
I don't know. I don't have that off the top of my head. I can pull that up. So, it seemed like 150 was kind of right
In the center
in
there.
the middle of some, because some were over 200 for the first level.
is that for the school zone or is that a red light?
I'd have to read it more carefully. I don't remember. I think it was for all of how they.
Cause I think
Yeah.
if we're gonna look at, we were talking about the camera being at Simon's. So if we're gonna be, looking at a lot of high school kids driving and teaching them how to drive safely, we might wanna keep it on the lower end. So it's not just something, I mean, if they get a bill for $250, they're gonna just pass off to their parents. If it's $100 one, they'll probably have people, figure out how to pay it themselves.
I'm not a parent, but had I been a parent, I'd be more likely to float him the 100, but not the 250.
As a parent,
Yeah.
I've been working it off.
Yeah, so I think, when we first started this project, that chart was more dire, right? And we had a revision that pushed out the gap forming a little bit later in our 6-year cycle, our 3 bienniums. Am I correct? We had good news at one point from Melinda about that chart looking
Right.
less dire earlier. And so it may feel a little counterintuitive to us that our charge ends at 2020, or at 2030, just because the gaps aren't forming.
But we're hoping those,
Earlier on,
Yeah.
yeah.
we're hoping those lines aren't starting to head down at 2030, but hopefully we're maybe, or even we're starting to head up at 2030.
What did the last group do in terms of the amount they recommended, either generating or cost containing? Did they go higher than the gap, and if so, by what?
Our recommendations, we were well above, like we were generating a healthy surplus in the kind of the mid-range. So if I were to look back, like basically we were growing the reserve in this period and kind of like 2 years out where a lot of the programs were taking effect. And then we were approaching back to the lines crossing again by the end. We had solved the structural deficit for the period, but if you were to extend it out one more year, you would probably see the lines cross in the year after our projection,
Okay,
because those expenses were catching up again.
One cool thing is, what the charge I gave them in 2020 is 6 years balance us. And that would have been through 2026. And the task force found a way to get us fully balanced through 2028. So you gave me an extra couple of years.
Okay.
So you wouldn't object to us giving you a couple extra.
No, you wanna do 2032, 2042?
It's hard to advocate that we want more revenue in the next 3 years, because right now we are above our target reserve.
Yeah, so
If I'm a taxpayer, which I am, the city says we would like to have in 2025, at the end of 2025, $3.8 million in the bank. Right now, we think we're gonna have $9.4 million in the bank. I guess my question is then why are you asking me for more taxes in 2025?
Why am I
So,
sacrificing?
My understanding, and please let me know if I'm understanding this right, is that if I were to put it in my own budget, is that while I am not making enough money by tapping into my reserves and my savings that I put aside last year or in prior years, I'm not in the red. But the only reason I'm not in the red is because I am tapping this year into savings that I had last year.
Well, I guess I hear you. In no place here in this graph are we in the red. We are below our goal reserve, but in no case here do we have a negative fund balance.
Sure, but the way I understand it, and again, please confirm, the way I understand it is the reason why we're not in the red is because we are tapping into our savings, which is the fund balance. It's the savings that are carried over year after year. And so
But we're not. We haven't hit the red line yet. That is the red line.
that's the goal of the reserve should always be at that amount or above. And so my savings, my personal savings, I always want a cushion of in 2030, 4.8. But I am spending my savings of last year and I just had 9 point whatever.
Well,
I guess hang on a second. I'll stop with this, but I guess I disagree that we're trying to be above the red line.
No, you are trying to be above both. That's, the red
Yeah.
line is the goal, the blue is what your fund balance is.
I want to be at the red line.
That's at least.
I don't
at
want to be
least.
above the red line.
Why not?
Because to be above the red line says I want to take in more tax revenue than the city needs to pay its bills and still have 20% left over.
I think that's what a lot of taxpayers are gonna think.
But it assumes something that's important in the storytelling for this, which is you have to, first of all, a reserve is just fiscally responsible and it's a standard.
Right.
So the 20% always floating around, so the bills can get paid and the people can get paid and all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone would argue that, but being above the red line is a longer-term strategy than year to year. And it's also a normative fiscal strategy, is to think ahead and collect monies now to pay bills later.
Well,
The-
and the thing is, the minute you, if we said, okay, in 2030, we're gonna be at the red line, we know that the trend is right now, this difference between where we're at in spending, right? Versus like how much we lost. So we lost the 2.6 million, right? From 2029 to 2030.
Uh-huh.
So that's how much more our expenses are than our revenues. So if we just hit the line in 2030, that's what's gonna happen in 2031. We're gonna be down 2.6 million.
I mean,
Or whatever the number, right? But it's gonna go down because our expenses are going high, faster than we can bring in the revenues.
if you think about your own budget, right? And you're starting the year and you say, okay, I've got an emergency fund of $30,000, 3 months of expenses or what have you.
Sure.
And then you look at your next year's budget and you say, okay, I have $100,000 of income and I'm expecting $110,000 of expenses. The fact that maybe you have $40,000 of emergency fund and you're okay with $30,000 of emergency fund doesn't change the fact that when you look at 100,000 of income and 110,000 of expense, that, to me, that causes a panic. I never want that to happen.
Yeah.
But if we get the 2030 line to 4.8, we have eliminated the structural deficit for the next 3 biennium.
No, the structural deficit still exists.
You're not just tapping into your savings as
If
much.
we raise $3.5 million in the next 6 years, the blue bars will not be going lower.
So we're looking at 2025.
If that money that we're raising is a continual amount.
Looking at 2025, we're at 9.4 in our savings account, right? And so if we say that we're okay with going to 4.8, then that means that we used the difference between that in savings, that we took in, 5.2 million less in revenue than we had expenses.
Okay.
And so that means that by definition, we did not solve the structural deficit.
I would say, well, right now the city has too much money in the bank. And there's no reason for the city to have $9.4 million at the end of the year. If we paid all our bills and we aim to have $3.8 million left.
So, but fundamentally, if the city had better control over revenue, then I would agree with you that the city shouldn't, it is inefficient for the city to hold cash.
Absolutely.
The city exists to provide services. The city is not a bank, right? But the city doesn't have the ability to just dial the lever of revenue and expenses, right? And so, and we know because of this structural problem, we know that we have to sort of like do this, and then go down, and then step it back up and go, like it's that constant thing. And so, like, I guess maybe you're saying that the cycle, you're okay with the cycle of 4 to 6 years of having to do this reevaluation. Whereas I would say I would rather increase the reserve to 40%.
Okay.
And sit between the range of 20 and 40% and kind of like, that's where I'm comfortable. I'm not.
That's a different objective.
Yeah, 20% was our objective as the healthy standard, but, I I think we were given a 6-year thing. Rob's saying, you know, if you felt like going to 8 years, that'd be great. And that does require more resources now to fill the gap later.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
Right.
I think we could agree, say we want to go to 2032. I would say by the time we get out 10 years, none of us know what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's
could have
how we
done
get
that.
there, because if we, and again, my understanding might be wrong, but if we address only the 2030, we are above the line, but we haven't addressed the systemic deficits that the city has, then necessarily in 2030, there needs to be an FSP to plan for the 2032 biennium. And then by 2032, we need to have another team for the 24 biennium, and so.
And I think that's great. I don't think there's any reason not to have a fiscal task force every year.
I get your point, and I think most people want to not pay extra, and I think in personal finance, so that's what I do. But when I'm like, we're dipping into credit card year over year, kind of that's kind of how I'm seeing here. And then if something like COVID happened again, the population that's gonna be impacted are not people like you or me. The services that's gonna be cut immediately because we don't have a reserve to tap into this. If you hit that red line, and that's all where we're at, we can't prepare for those emergency situations, we hope not to happen, but by having a little bit healthier blue line, I think that builds a cushion. And also, a lot of times, we know hiring consultant costs more money, so like, if we don't give enough runway for the city to plan long-term, then we might cost the city more in the long term, like trying to get just bare minimum to that line. So in my mind, like,
Yeah.
I know I'll mandate, but at the same time, I guess I'm in the camp is how do I have this be a sustainable way so that the city staff and more like Rob and more that they don't have to think in crisis mode. I want them to plan for the long term for how do we develop the city in the long term instead of worrying about what we need to do to build fund.
And I go back in time and say, let's not make that line red. If I can go back.
Thank you. I think that's a great justification or explanation of why we need to have a surplus. And in my mind, what our objective here is whatever policy, we need to set a policy, or the city council needs to set a policy. It says we need to have reserve levels that look like this. And we know because of the structural deficit, that's going to be challenged every year because expenses are going to exceed revenue. So if you want to maintain that level, you're going to have some sort of either new revenue, some or expense reduction. To avoid that sort of fluctuation year to year, you need to have a reserve and you need to have an adjustment annually that keeps you at that appropriate level. And so what I think of myself, what is, what's success here is if we look back and we saw that we maintain our reserves at a reasonable level because we didn't have any disaster where we really needed to use that money. But if that was true, then I would say we're a success here. We've addressed structural deficit as much as we can, given the time frame.
Can I go back to the,
Uncertainties of that.
can I go back to the minutes from your first meeting? Your mission is twofold. Number one, help the city with financial plan, covering the next 3 bienniums, biennia, so that the lines do not cross where expenditures would exceed revenues, while keeping 20% of operating expenditures in reserve. That's mission number one. Mission number two is help build reserves. What I meant by that is there's a separate fund that you guys we haven't talked about much, but it's the Strategic Opportunities Fund.
Yeah, you did.
And that's been drawn down to 0. And what we've done over the years is we've taken excess from the general fund and transferred it over to strategic opportunities. So when I talked to you about help building reserves, what I meant was also helping to build back the Strategic Opportunities Fund to about 2.5, 3 million. So you could consider the stuff above the red, kind of what we need for Strategic Opportunities Fund. So lines don't cross, keep above 20% and help build reserves.
But it's on those lines. So that I think was the initial part that was confusing for me, or maybe there are those lines of this, I'm still confused. But here we see reserve goal and fund balance. We do not see the lines between expenditures and revenues. And the reason why this blue bar is constantly going down is because throughout here, we have the line that constantly crossing.
Yeah, and you can see the.
And they're crossing, they're even crossing today. We're only dipping into credit cards or our savings to offset year after year.
And you guys know why it drops from 12 to 9.7 this year? It's because we're transferring the $2.4 million of unspent ARPA over to strategic ops, and that has to be spent on ARPA related things. That's why you see that drop in that 2023, 2024.
Yeah, so, this number here, or this is what we're talking about right here, okay? Here's our revenue, here's our expenses, here's the deficit. So by 2030, that's 2.6 million. And so, and it's positive today outside of the 2.4 million.
Yeah.
But starting next year, it's negative.
In fact, in 2023 and 2024, we run a small surplus.
So are we gonna also talk tonight about the expenses?
We're supposed to be done tonight with recommendations.
I know, it's a.
Yeah.
You guys are midnight.
I've said my piece, thank you all for listening. I'm just
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to get a feel for what number are we trying to get to over what time period?
Yeah,
Let me tell you what I think about this, line 27. What you got, I think we have here, each one of those years, that's how much of our deficit we're gonna hit. Due to the structural deficit each year, so in, what is that, 2025, we need to have a combination of revenue and expense adjustments that is worth, covers 366,000, by the time we get out to 30, we need to have total adjustments that get out to the 2.6 million, which gets us back to in the original, FSP, why we staggered out over time.
yeah.
And that gets to your issue. We don't have to do 2.6 million, I don't think, year one.
Right,
We need to
right.
be able to ratchet this up in a way that meets that.
Right, we need to start with things,
Year to year.
But nor are we trying to do
cameras
10
and
million
things like
dollars.
that to get some of that revenue.
Right.
Well,
First.
that's a policy decision. So
That's, and our, the policy as it is today is 20% plus the strategic opportunities fund. That's not necessarily 10 million to keep in the bank.
Well, 20% reserve is over operating expenses, correct? Yeah, it's not just the reserve.
Right.
That we need to have, we also need to have the funding to operate,
Well,
plus 20% year over year.
yeah. Well, I'm thinking too that also this is where, so some of the things that we're looking at, like the street lights, that's gonna continue being a savings.
Yeah.
Whereas like a levy lid lift, it'll just be a one time. So we're kind of thinking that
Well,
way.
a levy lid lift can be
Yeah.
framed so that it's a one-time bump, then it keeps going.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah. At one.
It grows 1%.
right.
Well, we would have to, because if not, the way I understand, I saw it was a total of 8.5 mil. If we're addressing it only in one-time costs, to offset it until 2030, we need to have raised 8.5 mil by the end of the 2030 period, one way or another.
To put it simply, if you guys get to 2030 and the difference between revenues and expenditures is negative, then you haven't succeeded.
We're fine. No.
if the blue line is way bigger than the red line.
So
we have succeeded.
the cumulative,
Or even a little.
the cumulative deficit for 25 to 2030 is 8.4 million.
But that's a reduction from the 9.7 million.
I understand. So we don't need to fund 8.4 million, but we should fund part of it and we should make sure that this 2.6 is taken care of. So if we wanna backload a bunch of these recommendations and say, okay, we've got enough reserves now, we don't need to go to November and do a levy lid lift this year and have that start in 2025. Let's do that in 2026 and have it start in 2027. Then I'm okay with that. But this 2.6 to me is more important than this here. This will be solved if this is solved.
Agreed.
I would rather see this, I would rather see us at 4.8 or even at 4 million in reserve, but have this deficit be positive 2 million. I would prefer that, because that is a more sustainable view than saying we're gonna solve the next 6 years, but then we're setting ourselves up for trouble starting in 31.
Yeah, and it's perfectly okay to drop down your reserves. I think to your point, it's perfectly okay to do that for a little while, as long as by 2030.
But what I just said there, do you agree with that? As long as we're not building up the reserves unnecessarily, do you agree that solving that 2.6 in 2030 is a worthy goal?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay,
I don't think our goal is to keep $10 million in the bank.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's our mandate. Personally, I would like Rob to have a strategic fund to play with, because I think it gives us opportunities for economic development when and if they pop up. If that strip mall ever wants to like come in and say, hey, we want to sell and develop the downtown, I want Kenmore to be able to jump on that opportunity without having to go to the.
Not also be repurposed in hard times to take us out a little.
You bet.
Exactly.
I also think the name of it, I think just by, again, you reminding us of strategic opportunities helps a little more too. That just is another purpose. That's more forward thinking versus reserve is, you're making money off our money.
Right, but that, you went from 12.4 to 9.7, so you filled that strategic opportunities fund?
But remember, it has to be used for ARPA.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Pandemic
so not.
purposes.
Okay, thank you. I think I picked this off by asking to see the chart again.
Okay, so it's
I'm ready
8:20.
to move on.
It's 8:20.
So can you just open up I sent an email to everybody in the FSP if you want to share just a little bit of data about the Cape rates.
I don't see it.
It's in the FSP one.
Oh, there it is.
And I did, look it up, back in 2015, San Francisco City and County ran a study, and, the speed detection on those cameras, is the same as like the regular radar gun that the police use, and it is accurate to within 1 mile per hour. And they actually do a zero tolerance. You do it over 21 in the school zone, and you get a ticket and you're automatic.
We have comments from,
Me.
So yeah, if he scrolls down, you'll see the average is 157 is the average, but we have some big outliers at the bottom. And so the midpoint is 136. I didn't calculate 136, I should do that.
Our next door neighbor's 136.
Yes, I have one of those. Yeah.
We don't have awful in there. They don't have any.
so $24.
Yeah, you know.
I know that.
You're like, it's you have to drive them over here. So not getting tickets.
So basically $25 is 125,000 per year. Is that per year or per biennium?
It's per year.
Per year. So I will put that
So
on.
it's like 190, what did you just say? Did you say $195?
Uh,
Or 136 is like 195.
So sorry, we're at 100. So every 25 additional dollars that we increase, we get 125,000 in revenue approximately. So what I'll add that as on a line.
Yeah.
To increase the first, this is just the first ticket or?
Yeah, it's not the first ticket, it's the first tier.
The
So
first
if
tier.
you're only going whatever the
6
mile
miles.
per hour is. If you're going really fast, then you bump
It
into
soars
the.
up.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, if you're going 6 miles over the posted speed limit,
Yeah.
the school speed limit.
That's for the 2 cameras we have right now.
Mhm.
They increased 120.
Yeah.
Is there a way to make it per camera?
Yeah. Well, so it'd be, so what did you say it was? It was 25,
$25 gets you 125,000,
right,
and we have 2 cameras,
yes,
so that would be,
57,
7,000 per
per camera.
camera. Okay. All right.
So I,
thinking that in my head.
And that's the annual.
that's the annual figure.
That's annual.
So I'm going to add, I'm gonna put, do you want to break it out into multiple lines, or should we just do one line?
One line.
Okay,
Oh, for the increase in the first tier?
Yeah.
I think it could just be its own line, one line.
one line. That's what I thought.
And you owe $50. Switch that to 24.
Well, is that the rate that we want to go with? Because, so it's 125,000 if we go to 125, or it's 250,000 if we go to 150. So what do you want to do? You want to do 124? You want to do 136? What do you want to do?
I'd shoot for 136, because Lake Forest Park is
Yeah.
doing
Yeah,
it.
right next door.
I noticed Bothell wasn't on there. I'd be curious. Do they not have cameras?
I don't think they do.
Okay.
Okay, so 120,000 divided by 24 times 36
Yeah.
is 180. That sounds.
Yeah.
Should wear my glasses for this. Can't see.
That's the two.
That's for 2 cameras.
And one of our lines is also adding more, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Wait, that's for the 2 we have, correct?
Yes,
Right.
With an increase of the
yes,
first tier.
increasing from 100, yes, on the original 2.
Yeah.
And that's,
And then we already had the other lines
To add more.
to add more, but did we change the numbers of the financial impact on those?
I will assume that if we,
It'll be 60,
I will assume
90,000 each.
Yeah.
that if we vote for this, that it will, if it basically,
Yeah.
I'll do the math so that if we vote for additional cameras and we vote for the increase, that they'll synergize
Mhm.
and add additional. So if we add 2 more cameras, then we get another 180,000.
All right.
If you vote for the 2 additional cameras and we vote for the CAPE program, then you get another 180. Presumably.
Okay.
and is it the same fine for the red light as the school zone?
I think so, right? Same fine,
Right,
regardless,
okay.
yeah.
So that's a potential 360. If we say yes to those 2 things.
Okay, we already have 2. We're talking about putting them at the other schools and at 61st left turn lane, right?
So talking to Rob, and what he recommended is that instead of specifying where, that we just say how many cameras.
Right, but it helps us know how to think of how many cameras.
Yeah.
Aren't there 4 cameras on there?
Yeah, there's 4 lines with cameras, and so,
But
Yeah.
isn't the 61st one left turn lane already like ready to go? Like,
Yeah, that's already accounted for, so that would.
Right.
61st would not be new revenue.
right.
So I think that what we had talked about was 3 cameras for the schools, and then a 4th wherever Tobin thinks it will have the biggest impact.
Okay,
Can we say
kids
kids?
in the 61st.
Is that separate from the bus line? All right, just wanted to.
Also, it might not be able to kick in until about 2027 or so, because we won't be officially a BRT corridor until then.
Okay.
Take a look at it.
So can you scroll down to our bottom line figure one more time of the stuff so far that added up to 3s or whatever?
Yeah, let's go to,
Please, yeah. That's the 4th. They're the same reason, no, yeah.
Since we converted that one to be the opposite of everything else, then it doesn't.
What's the total fiscal impact?
oh, sorry, I didn't catch everything. Total net fiscal impact is 2 million. I haven't voted yet, so that might go up.
Well, you took an average, right? So your vote
Yeah.
being null shouldn't.
Oh, no, it doesn't affect it, but if I vote higher,
Bump up, so right.
which, yeah. I'm guessing I have a little bit more appetite than.
But so the
So
two,
we're on- yeah, we would.
yeah, so the 2 million we have is one time, right? It's not the staggered effect.
So if we were to, depending on when we implement these things, right? So if we implement this, if we implement these two, if we implement the levy lid lift in 2026, right? Then that means that when we're talking about, where are you? That means when we're talking about this, right? So if we look at 2026 and we say, okay, we're going to add 560,000 starting here, then that means that we get that 500. So we get 560,000.
We're 300 in the red.
And then you get the equals this times 1.01. And so that means that the structural deficit is reduced by, you get up to, yeah.
But so that was my point, is that, well, that the number that you have of summing up everything at to 2 million doesn't address the 2.6. We, depending on when we implement it, we might not be 600 short.
So
We might-
as assuming that we get it implemented before 2030, then that means that we still have a $600,000 gap at 2030. But because if we implement, like say, okay, so let's do it this way. Say we implemented $2 million. We didn't get to 2.6, but we say 2 million.
Yeah.
And so we just do 2 million, but we get our 2 million starting in 2026. That means that we still have a structural gap of 600,000. But the net over the, we've solved, or, the 8.4 million, we're actually net positive over this is what you were talking about.
Right.
Is like, okay, we're gonna start the taxes today because we can't make up the structural gap. So instead, we're gonna start taxes earlier and build up a war chest so that when we get to 2030, we've got a little bit more savings to bite into so that we can solve the structural deficit next time.
Yeah, my point was slightly different, is that if we start in 2026, the 2 million, but we have that 1% bump each time.
Yeah.
We're not 605 short, we're less. I'm not saying we're at 2.
Yeah, assuming
Right.
so this
that's
is
what
the
we
modeling
need.
that I have to do
Yeah.
is because the sales tax is going to grow by 3%, the property tax is going to grow by 1%,
Yeah. So that's why the 2 million is a good number, but it doesn't actually tell us if where are we in that approach.
So would it make sense now to go look at that next category down, which is the fees and
Yeah.
whatever it was?
Yeah, if we want to discuss. So we talked about the levies.
What about that one? Is that?
So the electric utility tax, it's a high potential of success. It's councilmanic. I feel like we captured the DEI. So this is just kind of a voting item. Public safety sales tax, we talked about that. Utility rebate. Again, this is high because the council can just decide to do this. So the success is good. Plus the estimates are solid because they're based on past experience. Vehicle tab fees, this is councilmanic. So it's a high potential of success. We can do DEI considerations, but I mean, it's kind of, people who drive cars, poor people drive cars, low income people drive cars. And so they would be impacted by this potentially more than people with high income.
There is a correction on that vehicle tab fee.
Okay.
That should be 130,000, not 180,000. Because $20 gets you 360, and councilmanically, you can only go to fifth, another 10.
Okay, got it. So we'll, I think we just want to stick with the councilmanic on that one.
Yeah.
Okay,
You guys know what councilmanic means.
look at us.
You taught us the fancy words.
Transportation sales tax increase from 0.1 to 0.2. This is voter approved, right?
Well, at that rate, so that rate's at the 0.15, so we can do 0.1 to 0.2. So 0.1, remember, is councilmanic. 0.15, which originally was in the budget at this 0.15, but we have, in the model you're looking at now, we have brought it
Took it
down
out.
to the 0.1.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is 460.
Which is,
So that's already in the
Well,
model.
it's like 460 or. it's
Yeah.
lower than
yeah,
that.
so increasing it from 0.1 to 0.2 is an incremental 718, is that correct?
Mm-mm.
Would it only be 460?
It's an incremental 460.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we need to change this. Okay, potential of success, this is voter approved.
No, councilman.
No, it's up to 10% is councilmanic, the incremental is voter approved.
Anything higher than 0.1 is.
Right, we're going from 0.1 to 0.2, not a 10%. Oh, you said we go to 0.11 councilmanically?
You can go to
No,
0.1
0.10.
councilmanically, which is already in the old model,
Yeah.
and to go to 0.2 requires voter approval.
So anything over. So we went 0.15
Got it.
or 1.8.
I don't think we could raise it 0.1 without a vote.
Surface water utility tax increase,
Not high.
councilmanic, it's a high potential of success, but low fiscal impact because it's only 50,000. This one, this was discussed a number of times. Rob said that he talked to the card room, which is where most of these revenues came before they stopped gambling, allowing gambling in Kenmore. And they said even if they allow it, they will not bring back the card room. And even if they did bring back the card room, it may not bring back the $500,000 in taxes that we were getting before. It may not be as popular. So we don't know how much it is. I think it's probably relatively low. I personally would rather just take this off.
I'd happily do that.
Okay. Sorry, whoever suggested that 3 different times in the in the balancing act. Tax, I think that this one is pretty, it's councilmanic, but low approval and based on the balancing act information.
What's our average on that one?
Sorry,
What's our average vote on that one?
this one is 1.43.
We're all doing number one.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just going through the other items to see if there's any other outstanding things that we need to discuss or refine. Eliminate emissions tax. So obviously this is high because they can just choose not doing nothing means that this already happens. And then the logic tax, this is low.
So in this category, how many people have currently voted for it as a priority? For them as a priority?
Voted for what?
So we have strong support for the utility tax rebate program and public safety tax, but those are the only 2. Everything else is a 1 or a 2.
Hey,
But the admissions tax, we all voted
The
on.
what?
lodging tax.
Yeah, we're right here.
So you say potential of success would be medium, and actually, it's actually high because, right, if we implemented a lodging tax, it would pay for half of an existing employee. So that would offset our cost of an existing employee by about 50 grand.
Okay.
But how is that tied to the potential of success?
This council can adopt it.
Oh,
Okay. The reason I had said it at the medium is because it requires the effort to create that council, like so it takes a little bit of extra effort to get it to work.
I can take a person who's in our forecast and repurpose her to the LTAC and get her half of her paid for through the lodging tax.
Would that I guess the question is, if she's spending half of her time doing whatever this is, does that mean that she's not spending time doing other things that would need to be?
Yeah, it
Picked up.
happens to be the employee that's been working on the farmer's market.
Okay,
And she's limited term, but she kind of inadvertently got put into the forecast anyway.
okay,
So her time spent on forecast, farmer's market can now shift over to lodging tax.
oh, okay, great, so, and, okay. And that, I assume that those were not in the forecast, so I think that makes it easy.
So that position is limited term, but it got in the forecast. That's what I mean, I guess, so.
So I'm, I think that we should also put the, if we decide to let them lapse, then that would be cost savings, right?
Let what lapse?
The temporary employee, the farmer's market employee, because they are in, so that would be an option to,
Cost saving.
for cost savings, yep.
Let them go. And let the term in.
Let's see, where is our? Revenue. Cape. Expense reduction, here we go. Fireworks, other events. Let temporary employees contract end. And what is the annual cost?
The salary and benefits probably a little over 100,000 a year, maybe like 110.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is a potential. Where were we? Lodging tax, okay, other revenue, rental rates,
No, it's cost.
yeah, this is a comment from the city. I asked to fill out some of these, or to give us indication. So I don't love this as an option. It sounds like the estimate is hard to get, and
Yeah.
it looks like it's probably a low.
And I made a comment, wherever my vote is, that I felt, you don't have to read it, I can just say it, that I feel like this is a wall, and I really agree with Jennifer. It's a barrier to, we're asking you for more money, but you have to rent the city hall that's charging you more money already.
Mhm.
Or asking you for more money already. It seems ill will.
And I kind of went the other way and said, if it's costing us money to rent, to have City Hall open for some segment of the population, and that's costing us money to everybody, then maybe we just stop using City Hall for public meetings that aren't council this. You can't have a non-city meeting in City Hall.
Oh, I was assuming they weren't after hours and weren't requiring additional costs.
So one of the things that got changed that just happened with her policy update is they did reduce the time to current work hours, basically. So
Oh, they did.
so they allowed it, yeah, so people can't rent outside of what we already have people here for.
Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I mean, that was a good point you made.
That
I
was,
was thinking of it in terms of, if we have room at the hangar, we're not really making it, so we're asking for more, we're just asking them to move across the street.
Okay, do we want to just delete this line, or,
I'm happy with that.
okay,
With the new policy that.
okay, log boom, so this is gonna be a little bit tough to,
Yeah, but
estimate.
Still impact, her thought that would be more, realistic would be maybe to bring in like food trucks or to have something happening just during, like, non-winter hours, basically, but that space doesn't have access to water. So it's
Oh.
limited in what kind of food and things like that. So if you brought in food trucks and figured out what kind of percentage we could get, maybe advertise this week, we're having Mexican, next week we're having whatever.
It's like
More food truck, and that.
I,
Follow.
I think that this is probably
Say
one
that
that we
stop.
kind of talk about, like, I think we have those addendum items where we're saying, you know, like, these are the unknown,
Yeah, the ideas.
ideas that we wanna,
There's a lot of value to the idea of the food truck thing.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, it can't hurt, right?
Bothell has food truck park now.
Yeah.
Did we get percentage of that, like the food trucks over by Karen and all the other places?
I don't,
Those
I
are
don't think
private.
so, yeah.
Just the sales tax.
Yeah, but it does bring in the sales tax.
We get sales tax.
Based on how many times there are stops in Kenmore versus Bobble.
If we do food trucks like at the park, then presumably there would be an opportunity for revenue there.
Right, right.
So, yeah, we can just kind of, yeah, I think that's a, picnic shelter rental fees, low impact, but high success. This one,
I didn't understand this line.
I didn't either.
this is gonna be an addendum item because we don't have any specific idea, but the city has land, they should do something with it and
Right.
it shouldn't go to, I think what we had discussed is that, and this is what we'll kind of narratively discuss, is rather than go for a one-time cash infusion by just selling it, let's find some kind of arrangement where we have a revenue share, we have a lease, where that provides ongoing income rather than just a one-time cash.
That was one of the things that came up during from the housing fiasco. Instead of giving them the land, lease it to them for 60 years, they get the build and the city gets to put money.
That's right, you can build that in because it will be current, expenses that you do to help offset that structural deficit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Presumably whatever sharing or whatever revenue share or lease will grow at more than 1%. Didn't get it. It looks like we didn't get a chance to investigate this one, so I'm going to delete it. Any opposed? Okay.
We are looking into it. Yeah, thank you for that, Mike.
I just figure everybody should be paying.
Talked about the cameras. This is the all red light violations, conversation with Tobin. Kenmore does not have a lot of red light runners. The cost of adding extra cameras would outweigh the revenue. But a signal change at 170 and 68th where there will be no turn on red, it does alter behavior. Maybe makes sense to add. Oh, yeah. Cause they're making changes to the bike lane and the signaling. And so there may be an opportunity to add a red light camera there because they're not going to allow a turn on red.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
So
I need that right on red.
I think just ride a bike. No big
Is
deal.
that the left from 68th to 170th?
You're saying off the Simons to go over, over the bridge.
Yeah, you're on Simons and you turn onto Juanita. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Under the bridge. So I think that this is an addendum item. If we do end up recommending a couple of cameras, then I think that we add this as something that was suggested that that could add.
Economics.
Is that one
What?
specific,
Economics.
is that one specific to the same light? Or is it not just the left turn, or is it all red light cameras in Kenmore?
No, it's this was just the 61st and Bothell Way. So yeah, and what he's saying, so right now it's just the left turn, right? The left turn on red. And we were saying, could we get more revenue if we do all red lights? And Tobin is saying, probably not.
But just at that intersection.
So yeah, that's what we recommended here. So what he's suggesting over here is a different intersection. Yeah.
But the one that Robinson is already baked into the budget, we already have that revenue assumed.
Yeah, this is gonna be zero. Because Tobin is basically saying this is zero. So rather than having this, so I would delete this line, but I want to keep this comment from Tobin so we can reference it in the memo. And then we just added this that we discussed. And then this one we were talking about a little bit. You were saying that you looked into it, but it looks like existing cameras initiate enforcement when the school zone speed limit is exceeded by 6 miles per hour. Generate more revenue. So yes, we can change the speed limit threshold. There's a photo enforcement memo from Tobin with speed thresholds of other cities with fine amounts based on the memo. 6 miles per hour over seems appropriate. No, Kenmore has the lowest first year fine. Okay, so that's where the first year
So
fine,
instead of changing it to 4, we're saying roads rather charge you more on your first time.
Right.
at that first tier.
At the
So,
first tier.
yeah, so,
First tier. That's-
so we keep it at 6 miles per hour, but it's
Yeah.
more expensive if you go 6 miles per hour.
That's right.
Yep.
Right. I like
So
that theory.
it may be accurate to get them, but it sounds like other cities,
Mhm.
the comparable cities are at that 6 miles per hour limit. Okay, and then, this, we talked about this one, the structure of this, and I think that the city is going to do this because they need to move money from CAPE program to general fund, but it's just kind of moving money around. It doesn't actually have an impact to the general fund, because these dollars for CAPE go to the CAPE program. They don't go to the general fund, but it relieves pressure on the general fund because we can do things like this, but allocate the officer time of reviewing and those kinds of things too. And Rob was saying that the law says that we can.
Yeah, so the state law says that you can, spend the money on traffic safety activities. And it doesn't define traffic safety activities. It gives some examples, but it doesn't define. And, we're interpreting traffic safety activities to include police patrol, which is a lot of money.
So a big chunk of that, a big chunk of our contract with King County, we can just, 50%, like a lot of that personnel time is traffic. And so there's probably not a limit. Assuming that is correct, there's not a limit to how much we can offset in the general fund by allocating those costs.
Right, you're saying that takes the officer to a different fund, but what that's saying is actually replacing them with a civilian.
Oh. I forgot about that one. Or sorry, I got them mixed up.
My understanding is that's not legally allowed right now. Isn't
I
it
don't-
just kind of moot for us?
I think,
At our table at the town hall, they were unanimous, no wannabe cops. Videos and making tickets.
It's low. If there is an impact, it's gonna be low. I'm fine with just removing it.
I would love it.
Okay. Okay, convert to streetlights, pretty straightforward. Cost neutral or even a cost increase to bring in-house landscape maintenance and street sign maintenance. I thought that our public works person said that there would be cost savings with this.
That's what they said when they gave their presentation.
It is.
Did that change?
It did change, yeah,
Okay.
so I reached out to her again to try to get numbers and she, and I also looked at. The cost, and so, I mean, there's no way that we'd have to have more people to help, you know what I mean? So there's no way that we could just do that work,
Okay.
so,
So we thought it was just a facilities thing, and she's saying that.
And so landscaping was one, and then the street sign maintenance, she's gonna go back and look again. I didn't see a lot of expenditures under the street sign maintenance unless they're buried somewhere that I don't see them, and so we talked with her just yesterday, I guess, and she was gonna go back and look at that, but Rob, you kind of had asked her, like, are we talking, 6 figures, how many figures, and it's just like tens of thousands of dollars, so
Okay.
it's not, it's not a big financial.
Yeah.
Just let
Right,
them-
but it was a level of service also that like, we're contracting, but we're not getting what we want right now. That's what it sounded.
Exactly, and so in order to give the level of service we want, again, it's not gonna result in cost savings from.
Right,
what we
so
were getting.
it's probably something that we should do, but that it's a more bang for our buck rather than saving bucks.
Yeah,
So do we want to keep it on the sheet or should we just remove it since it's not? Okay. Done. Any still unknown on the need to provide additional information, take a few months to determine if there's any cost savings.
yeah, we
Seems like good due diligence, but.
Yeah,
it's
we
not
will-
factored
yeah.
into
I
our.
think that's a
Yeah.
good, like, addendum item to
Yeah.
say, hey, the city should be looking into that,
Yeah.
and we are.
Okay. I think these are pretty straightforward.
So fireworks, I do have a remark about. And I put it in the comments field. It may be more of a moral consideration than a cost consideration, given this dollar value, but you know, fireworks are expensive, they're polluting, they're noisy, they terrify animals, both domestic and wild. They're basically notoriously awful in every way, except for people who holler, get trashed and clog up the roadways. If you can't tell how I feel, I think. A personal feeling, but I'm just wondering if there's any appetite of this city to think about possibly, at least just reducing the frequency. Don't they do it New Year's and?
No.
Just 4th of July.
Okay, get rid of it. That's. It's not clean, it's not green, it's not humane. And so I just wanted to toss it out there, but it really doesn't affect our charge all that much. I just have soapbox.
How much of the cost is the fireworks themselves versus the cost of the event?
That should be a net number. The event is more than that because, so we get sponsors to pay for a lot of the events. I don't have the total budget on here handy, but it's, that should be, that 30,000 is low. And that tells me that it's a net number after sponsorships. Just a couple other things. So 10 or 15 years ago, the city banned personal use of fireworks in the city. And they brought the fireworks show on as a kind of a consolation prize. They said, hey, to encourage you not to get your own fireworks, the city's gonna put on a show. Does that work? No, but it's still.
No man.
There's also new technology there's new technology instead of using pyrotechnics, there's like lasers or drones or something that can create just as spectacular of a show without all the noise and the pollutants and everything. We've looked into it, it's more money, but it's something we want to consider.
FAA might say no because we're on the CTAC traffic corridor. Lasers, they might not be a huge fan of.
Yeah.
I think it's the drones that are usually.
Well, I mean, drones were high enough at night, they'd be mainly Ken wire, but lasers.
No, the laser, I'm saying that the drones is more likely to candidate. I don't think that we would do lasers because you have to have fog for lasers to actually.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the technology, but there's some technology that creates a pretty cool fireworks show.
Okay, well,
Cause it could, I mean, it's also a safety issue, is there are families that are gonna tell their kids, we're going here instead of buying the fireworks. And the other safety aspect, it is a, training exercise actually for our emergency management coalition.
Yeah,
That convinces me not in the least.
I know.
Over my position.
so
Thank you for sharing.
for me, all of that would apply if we remove fireworks and we replace it with something else. If we had, light drones, doesn't have the noise, doesn't have the bang, clearly the fireworks, I'm with you, the fireworks terrorize my pets and pets in general, veterans as well. My former
Yeah.
neighbor, served and hates July 4th. Has a very bad night, because of that.
Are we really as the finance team gonna decide if we're fireworks?
No.
I think we're gonna have to fight with a lot
No,
of cities
but
on that one.
Something optional has to come off.
Exactly, we have to give,
Something we like has to go away.
Well,
I'm not saying it's the fireworks, but one of those 4 lines,
I put other events.
that's all.
Well,
what else we got? What else we got?
I was confused on that. So we've been changing the number of summer concerts we have the last few years. So is 50,000 for one concert or is this for how many? All of them for what year though? I mean, sometimes we've had 5 and sometimes we've had 2.
Well, it's whatever we're budgeting for, which I think is 4.
Also, just a thought, you sent out a survey, I know I got one, on what people wanted. Of those 3, what was I think fireworks were, and movies, I don't know, that's what I'm saying, there was a list.
Are you talking about in the balancing act or in something else?
No, in
In the
the,
survey.
It's in the EMC.
Oh, in the EMC.
in the survey.
It didn't ask about.
Or love where you live, maybe?
I thought I saw, because I remember picking, not necessarily one over the other, but which one I liked the most or something.
I don't think are there any other events? I know that the events
Oh,
budget,
farmers market.
it's net zero because we're passing it off.
Yeah.
It was paid with ARPA funds and,
The paper.
but
So it's hard to look at these as, fireworks in my case, as reductions. Because all of these things are part of what makes a community. And so it is hard to think, and the cost impact's so low.
Yeah.
It's a hard one because of that.
You know, there's one that we left on here about like just increasing efficiencies across the city. Like just trimming up even tighter. We did that a lot at the last time we prepared the budget,
Mhm.
but I think it's fair to say that we can tighten even further. So if you're looking for something, I'd be comfortable with $100,000.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, and that's just trimming here and there and everywhere.
In a way, it's not really operational efficiency audits, though. I mean, I think it would be more like increase internal efficiency by X amount, right?
Yeah.
An audit usually speaks to bringing someone in to look at you and figure out how you can do things better, and that costs.
Internal audit.
Saying is probably
Yeah.
also like a lot of projects just.
I audit all day long for my company, like.
Like say,
Yeah,
for
it's a big
example,
job.
it's just a bunch of little things that add up, like, so let's say, for example, somebody has an equipment line item that's pick a number, $1,500. But I look over the last few years and every year they spent $900. I said, well, if you've only been spending 900, you're asking for 1,500, can I take that 600?
Alright.
And when you do that across the entire budget over every line item, it
It's
adds up.
closer to, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you meant like pushing some projects out further or expanded, okay.
Well, yeah.
I remember when we were looking at the events budget, it was like 350 a year. And
For all of those,
for all of the events, so these add up to 90
What this doesn't count is staff.
staff.
So you got the full-time volunteer events coordinator, and then her interns. And again, these are net costs, so full costs. There's full cost before sponsorship.
I mean,
really, yeah, it would have a commensurate reduction in staff if we reduce.
yeah, I'm not personally, I'm not interested in this, but
No.
like, I feel like, you talk about like, if the mandate from the community is that it should be mixed, then these are the kinds of things that you gotta cut.
I don't like it either.
I'm not voting for it, but,
How,
do you,
Well, if we have the
Is-
temporary employees contract in, right?
we do have that.
Is that a value,
We have 100,000 there.
And then 100,000 from Rob already saying operation, that's 200,000 right there.
Okay, so should we take out this line? Are we interested in this line at all? Or I feel like these staff, yeah,
I'm never gonna vote yes on that.
okay,
Yeah.
we'll just take it out then.
Yeah.
We'll have these specific items and then, yeah, we'll move on. All right, reduced
I
parks.
feel like are the movies, so, I mean, I've been kind of thinking of how much of the community partakes in each of these, because I've seen the summer concerts seem to be a lot of people and fireworks does.
Yeah, the movies are a fraction
Yeah.
of the concerts. Anywhere between 100 and 300 people. Okay. At the movies.
And if you're not gonna eliminate the person,
And
then it's like, eliminate the activity of what are they gonna do? I mean.
It's so cheap.
it's gotta be-
Instead of, specific things, we literally maybe make a general suggestion to look to trim that events budget down. A certain percentage of so let the event staff will kind of logistically decide what will be best to run or be more efficient on, but we are recommending them to reduce the expense budget by a certain amount.
I think if we wanted to reduce resources, there should be a corresponding reduction of deliverables.
Yeah,
Mhm.
a recommendation
The
for
only thing, concrete numbers, what's going by?
these.
Just that, I just feel like we're talking about, but the numbers are not exactly factual numbers.
No, these are pretty solid.
That, and not including staff costs.
Yeah, cost is the majority of the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You know, there was a time when every year, federal government administration would ask every department to kick in some cost savings. And every year, natural resources would put up all the clothes, for Washington Monument. And, no. But it's kind of a budgeting
Yeah.
joke that, you know, okay, we got no Washington monuments in your budget this year. These are Washington monuments.
Yeah.
Can you ever see the city council accepting them? Not gonna happen. How many people at this table want to recommend that? No.
should we just take them out then?
Yes.
I understand we've got to get something up
I
here.
respectfully,
Well,
Disagree.
There's two one.
everything can stay.
Okay,
No, but if we're saying two of 100,000s.
I'm gonna just leave it
But-
and
but-
we'll-
I think she just meant, I didn't think it meant that.
Oh,
It just
great.
meant the things that were about
Great.
programming and events. Is that what you meant, Jeff?
I'm going to add them back and we will let the voting decide.
Like,
We will spend.
I think there is value in, unfortunately, you guys wanna cut the stuff we can cut, which is not gonna significantly impact our quality of life. Will, in terms of how the city is run, is gonna be these events, so you say we should be more frugal, well, unfortunately, you're not gonna like the recommendation, but this is what we could. This is what we could cut.
Yeah.
I'm a
So-
little concerned with that, in the sense that if our whole package includes asking them for more money, but removing the things they like about the city, we've got a problem. Right?
Again, back to is this 200,000 not enough?
No, so, two different things, 200, maybe it is. As for we're asking for more money, but I think what we heard is okay for taxes, but the city has to live within its means, is a feedback we received, and therefore we're asking for more money, but we'd be asking for more if we weren't going to reduce other stuff that is more additional, less compulsory, like road maintenance and stuff like that, because we're not between fireworks and degrading the quality of roadworks and maintenance to ensure we don't have potholes. If we have to cut one and you want us to cut something, we're gonna cut the fireworks. It sucks that we're asking for more money, but at the same time not giving you cool stuff that you might like. But the feedback has been, it shouldn't be just tax increases, the city should reduce its expenditures as well.
Yeah, and I think people aren't gonna buy that where the reductions have to come is out of tiny pots that they have fun.
No, but
It's there.
understood.
Those were giant pots
Yeah.
and there was a reduction
Right.
potential. That's a different story.
Understood.
That's what, I mean, it may be an option instead of 4 summer concerts, you go down to 3. I mean, it's, there's.
You get another, it's $7,000. Good job. It goes a long way to fix
But it all
it.
ends up, I mean,
Everybody has to feel something, that's what you're giving them.
right, I mean, it all ends up.
It's 20% cut, just like this is a 20%.
So would it
I mean, that's the
make
gift
any
that's
sense for us to just vote again and see
Yeah.
how it's falling out?
Yeah.
Sure.
Knowing that the result isn't gonna tell us if we're there, because you still need to scale it
We need to model it.
over time.
Mhm. So, Rob, would it be also an option is to look at events that do bring the city together, because I think that's the kind of core of those events, and is not as staff intensive, so maybe they would cost less.
Such as,
I didn't have the answer, I was saying, is that something, I mean, like, maybe look at what other
The boat
cities,
race we had on Saturday? For
well, that
example,
wasn't a city event though, was it?
It was on city ground, so I'm guessing there was some maintenance that happened somewhere.
we had very little to do with this, yeah, and it was on the State Fish and Wildlife boat launch property. We were a small coordinating role.
Yeah, so something like that. I mean, we had a great event. City didn't have to do much, didn't have to spend much money.
But people still came to Kimler, they're all over our bridge
Hey,
and
Melinda,
watching it. It was fun.
did you look at this Parks Project Manager,
Fun.
line?
That's right. I think that's what it is. Go there.
I think it's supposed to be 100,000. I don't know if that's,
Yeah, stuff in my hand.
That's an acceptable number.
Okay.
Because it's really just kind of order of magnitude.
is this something that's feasible, justifying the allocation to the capital fund, and does it make sense?
Yeah, just charging it all 100% capital. Yep. Just like the one right above it.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we talked about property. These are all just the
Those are all low.
the addendums, so.
They're ideas, which. they can just-
Okay. So, okay, remind me what our timing is. We need to, the council is going to their retreat
26.
The 26th.
on the 26th. Okay, and are we meeting next week?
You guys know? Yeah, you guys?
Yeah,
Well, can I do a quick time check, process check?
yeah,
This,
that's,
this meeting was supposed to be done a half an hour ago, and it still feels like you got a ways to go.
Yep.
One idea is to meet again next Wednesday. Because you're all looking tired too. So, or if you think you're close and can wrap it up in the next 20 minutes, go for it. Or if you need another couple hours, then
What,
kick it for next Wednesday.
so I imagine, and Jeff, let me know if there needs to be a first phase of voting, followed by some modeling. And then we align on timelines.
yeah,
I would imagine, and so not to be all about, on your shoulder, looking at you model, well, once we've done the first round of voting, I think if we could get through a first round of voting today to allow you to do the modeling, then whenever we do it, either tomorrow, next week, whenever, that seems more realistic.
And the voting being, putting our numbers in there, right?
Putting our numbers now so that we can see what are we supposed to model and see how far or how close we are to our end goal
so,
for next time.
yeah, but I would like a little bit of homework time to kind of build out that model structure, and so that it's dynamic when we're actually talking about timing and things like that. We can see that graph update live, especially now that I have the new version. And then also, I think that if we could start the draft of the memo, the structure of it, and do a little bit of fleshing out the broad strokes of what we've been discussing, and we have a preliminary round of voting. You know, there is appetite for public safety. There is appetite for Metropolitan Park District. There is appetite for the public safety sales tax, the CAPE. You know, some of these items that it seems like we're pretty, we're coalescing already on. If we could start drafting, we could start a draft of that so that when we come together, we can have something to look at and say, yes, this is the right direction. This encapsulates our discussion, or no, we need to change how we're talking about it. We'll obviously, we won't be able to completely finalize that memo until we've made definitive decisions, but at least some of the language around these items that seem to be toward the top of the list would be nice to have, started.
When you say you need time for homework, and I don't know if it's even possible, but, so how much time do you want? And just thinking of, I know you need to prepare for the retreat, so I don't know if people are open to meeting before Wednesday.
That's what I was saying, Tuesday or Monday.
Yeah, or potentially, I'm just throwing it out there, feel free to say no, but tomorrow. But at the same time, if you need more time than just turn around by tomorrow, then that let's not suggest tomorrow if you need more time to do the modeling, because you do have a day job.
Yeah,
But then I also think when you, if, for us to go in and put our numbers in on these, we should probably be doing that in the next day or two.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then let him do his modeling, and then we meet.
I want to let the public know that with more than 24 hours in advance that this meeting is happening. That the next meeting is
Okay.
happening.
Monday or Tuesday.
I will work on this Thursday. So I'll be ready anytime after that.
Council meeting Monday.
Monday's a city council meeting and,
Tuesday, this room is available. Wednesday, it's not. We'd have to go in there, so. We can book this room for Tuesday if everybody works.
I can do Tuesday too.
I am out of state starting Friday morning and I won't be back till the following Friday. But I can get my votes in
Mhm.
and I think that would be.
Yep. And if you have any commentary on, on timing, that'll be the majority of what we're doing. So if you have any strong feelings about timing for any given item, otherwise we'll just assume that we'll kind of negotiate and figure out what makes sense. I feel like the timing is mostly just a game of Tetris, just getting the blocks to fit.
Yeah,
So
it's not so much a decision-making thing as the decision was the vote and then how does it stack?
yeah,
I can't do Tuesday, but I'd be happy to, I've already given some commentary, happy to do voting in addition to commentary. I decided to do it on Tuesday.
that's not a planning, or, yeah, it's not planning commission, is it? Okay, all right. But we could do Wednesday as long as we're meeting there. And I think Wednesday's fine for us. We'll scramble a little bit before the retrieval. That's okay.
so Wednesday then is what we'll aim for.
Sorry.
You can't do Wednesday?
But I'll still do the same thing. I can, send in all that stuff.
Okay.
And, does Nafe have a preference on Tuesday or Wednesday?
Nafe?
Yeah, I'm probably better on Wednesday because I think I'm starting a program at UW on Tuesday. So, but I'll have to confirm. But Wednesday probably works best.
Okay, so it sounds like we've only got one that can't do Wednesday.
Right, three or Tuesday.
Two.
Or two, yeah.
That's it.
You
She
can't
could
do
have been
Wednesday?
Tuesday or Wednesday. so.
Oh,
Okay, so we're out two. Okay. Okay.
Can I give you a little tidbit? I researched Maple Valley a little bit more, the levy lift. And it was 35 cents. And based on their assessed valuation, looks like it raised 2.4 million a year
that really does.
at 35 cents. Yeah, good number, Paul. Just a fact. I'm not trying to influence anything. So, just so you know what. Yeah, yeah.
Don't forget your gifts at the
night,
front.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I thought that was a really productive discussion.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Incredible. I love watching you guys work.
I'm just.
Draft recommendation.
What's that?
I don't know how you guys did this before, that.
So the consultant.
Oh,